Good morning, everybody. We are imminently starting the meeting. Thank you for your patience. Oh, God. I almost just threw my phone all over you. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We will be getting started momentarily. We do have quorum now, and thank you. Got lots on the agenda today. Actually, maybe I can start. As we get started, I'm just going to read some of the introductory items. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Those who are here live, those who are joining virtually on WebEx, and those who are listening in on YouTube. If you have any technical questions, especially on WebEx, and you're wanting to make public comment, please feel free to send a chat message to the host. If you're here in person and have questions, you're welcome to talk to Janae and Jennifer in the back. And we will get started. Please remember that we are recording, also broadcasting live on YouTube, but on YouTube, there's no interaction with the participants. If you want to give public comment virtually, you need to be on WebEx, and you can find the link to the WebEx on our website at poc.lacounty.gov. We'll get started as soon as Chair Mundo returns. Check-in question.
Highs and lows. Okay. One high, one low.
Roses and thorns.
Roses and thorns. Let's do it.
Do I have 4 minutes? I need to run in the car and get my cell phone.
Run.
Thank you, Chair. There.
Run.
Oh, never mind. It's my bad.
Yeah.
Do you want somebody to go get it for you?
No.
And my pocket. Oh, no.
Switch them ball.
Yeah. Ready? Good morning. It is now 9:21, Thursday, July 24, 2025, and I am calling to order the meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Eduardo Mundo, Chair of the Commission. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing from our panelists, commissioners, and the public today on several important issues, including a presentation about PREA, Probation's Depopulation Plan, and Global Plan updates, a presentation on some pressing human resource issues, and updates in the POC's data and information request. A busy meeting, and I know you all want to hear from the chief, so let's get started. I will turn it over to Wendy Julian, our Executive Director, to explain how you can participate during today's meeting, and then she will call the roll.
I'm going to keep this quick today since we have mostly return customers in the audience here. So welcome. We really value your participation in the meeting, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking so that you can talk. The way we're going to do this, we'll go through each item. We'll hear the presentation. There'll be an opportunity to give public comment on every item. And you can do that by coming up to the podium if you're here live or using the raise your hand function on WebEx. If you are calling in on WebEx, just dial *6 on your phone. I'm sorry, dial *3 on your phone to get in line, and then you dial *6 on your phone to unmute. You also can provide your comments in writing at info@poc.lacounty.gov. Please make sure that your comments relate to the agenda item, and if they don't, then you're welcome to give public comment at the end of the meeting in the general public comment section. We are broadcasting live and recording on YouTube. Buenos días, bienvenidos. Ya hemos iniciado la conferencia en WebEx y en persona. Si le gustaría hacer un comentario público, puede avisarnos que quiere traducción al inglés o también si está viendo la reunión por WebEx, puede usar el botón de levantar la mano y le ponemos en la línea para hacer su comentario público. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioners, please respond when I call your name. Commissioner Canales is absent. Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Jackson is absent. Commissioner Kakani absent. Commissioner Don Meredith? Commissioner Sam Prater? Commissioner Tyreek Ship? And Commissioner Terry is absent, and Chair Eduardo Mundo.
Here.
So with 5 members present, we have quorum, and Chair Mundo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Let's proceed with item 2, the approval of the June 23rd regular meeting minutes. Wendy, do we have any written public comments or live public comments for item number 2?
No written public comments. No one online. We can proceed with the vote.
Okay, may I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the June 2025 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Harris, and seconded Commissioner Prater. Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, commissioners, please vote with a voice vote. Aye. Okay. Approved.
Great.
Okay, so now we will move on to item number 3. We will discuss and take possible action on a report from the Los Angeles County Probation Department on its progress with ensuring that all facilities that detain youth are compliant with the Prison Rape Elimination Act, known as PREA, standards and training, including the implementation of new policies and practices. Probation Director Nathan Martinez is here with us. Thank you for being so flexible with us in scheduling, and thank you for the detailed report back that addresses the POC and the OIG recommendations. The report is attached to the agenda, and we made some extra copies here for the audience members. Director Martinez, please proceed with your report.
Yes, first of all, thank you. Hear me all right on that one? Thank you for having me here for this report back. The Board of Supervisors actually positioned a motion back in June 3rd to encourage the development of this report back, not only for the board's information, but also to report with and work with the POC to continue reporting on progression with compliance as the department comes into compliance with PREA standards. As a part of the motion, unfortunately, I've been slotted to come do this presentation for a couple of months now, but with the motion, we're able to explain a lot of the questions that the POC had. I believe there was 4 standard recommendations or concerns that the POC recommended last reporting out, and also 9 recommendations by the Office of Inspector General as we develop compliance measures to come into compliance with PREA standards. That was on top of the 10 items that the department already identified as next steps towards compliance. Luckily, all of them kind of merged together because they're all systemically within the scope of PREA compliance. So you have the report in front of you, which is I hope very detailed. I know there was a lot of questions last time, and I hope we were able to answer a lot of those questions based off of our previous discussions. A high-level report back for this would be some of the key elements within the report are, number 1 is recently with the president and his administration, they actually defunded the National PREA Resource Center, which was a technical and training assistance provider for all jurisdictions across the nation. Fortunately, I'm a member of the National Coordinators Work Group, National PREA Coordinators Work Group, so we're still able to share a lot of information and training materials and best practices. We have regular meetings as a national organization. Also, a lot of CBOs or subject matter expert CBOs within the nation or throughout the nation, such as Just Detention International, Moss Group, have opened up free resources and have engaged with the coordinators work group to be able to utilize those free resources, whether it's webinars or monthly meetings. Office hours is what they call them through JDI. where we're able to still share information with each other as we develop, implement processes, and continue the work of complying with the PREA standards. So that's the key part of it. Within that strategy, we've actually we were engaged with the National PREA Resource Center with 3 TTA, or Technical and Training Assistant initiatives. We were able to complete one of them, and the other 2, unfortunately, were dropped off, but we're able to pivot to our collaborative partners and National PREA Resource Center work group to be able to continue those efforts in gaining compliance and developing processes and procedures for the department. A big feature of the report back is and concerns from the POC and OIG was specifying a lot of policies and procedures. Working with our policy unit, we've done a massive and comprehensive development of our policies, taking out our procedures. So we have 2 elements of policy and procedure. I know this was a concern or questions that were raised, how are we able to fully implement these policies and procedures into practice? And this was an effort that we've undertaken. With the board motion, it also is requiring us to work with the POC to conduct a town hall with survivors and also justice-involved personnel or lived experience persons in the community to help provide recommendations on how we can improve our practices of reporting, how we capture reports, and how we process reports within our organization. So we look forward to working with POC. We've already begun the process of working together to schedule this town hall so that we can get those recommendations and incorporate into our publishing of our revised policies and procedures. So that's a big one. And the policies and procedures itself has really been an opportunity for us to not only address some of the concerns and recommendations from our organizations, our partners, but it really helps us to pivot to be able to, with a procedures manual now, to really fine tune processes and pivot to be able to address things in a more fluid nature, and instead of going through an entire policy process when we have to make these adjustments for accountability or corrective measures. And that covers a lot of the OIG recommendations, was really specifying what my role is as the coordinator for the department, what the roles are of the PREA compliance managers at each institution, and the roles and responsibilities, how they trickle down in everybody's responsibilities for prevention, detection, and response. Let's see. And that covers training. Like I said, it was a comprehensive approach to really address all the concerns, and I hope that the information that has been provided will be able to address all those that were requested. You guys have any questions? Or I don't know.
Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments? Commissioner Harris.
So thank you for a lot of this good work and the report. I wondered if you could just get a little more granular with how this information is getting disseminated countywide, right? And just if you could speak a little more plainly about what the training process is for, line staff and just, department wide. I think we see a lot, that there are good policies, but there's so many facilities and there's so many different units, and just that seems like it would be difficult for any, not just this policy, but for any policy in such a large department. So I wondered if you could just try to bring to light some of the things that you're doing to get this information really widespread in the department.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Actually, I've reported a couple of times with POC of just the nature, the extent of how we've come to develop this program in its entirety. One of those efforts was back in 2019, when I first came on board, we were able to get a grant from Department of Justice That grant was really to expand our educational and advertisement of PREA throughout our department, where we, not only the tangible items, the things that you could actually see, which is our signages across the board, even expanding beyond the PREA compliance measures or requirements, where we have signage and pamphlets for parents and guardians, coordinator for contractors and volunteers, really expanding pamphlets, something that's tangible that a youth could take back to wherever they're going, where they have that information that on how to report grievances, how to report anything pretty much. So those tangible matters have been incorporated and we're funded through this grant. As a part of that, we've also taken into, I took it personally to heart when we were part of the PREA, prior to the POC. There was a lot of town halls with the probation reform implementation team, I think it was, where we heard staff and even the community members really tell us that training was very necessary, right? Very needed. So when I became the manager over PREA compliance, it's been a core principle for us that we have 4 elements to it. We have policy, procedures, education, well, it's actually 5, because you do implementation and quality assurance, right? So in that and with this grant funding, we've been able to leverage resources throughout the department and also with the grant. Just Attention International was one of our, I guess, coaches. And they were also a contracted service provider through the county when I first came on board and we first started developing the PREA compliance unit to really tackle as much education as possible, but ensure that education really addressed the needs of whatever we were going to be educating on. Currently, we have a 4-hour education, which is through our JCOC, which is our Juvenile Corps Academy. So as officers come in, we have 2-hour annual refreshers, which the requirement is biannually. But we really made it for these initial years to really ensure that staff get that education on an annual basis. We have what's risk screening tool trainings. We're really trying to target each of these elements, whether it's developing direct sexual abuse review trainings. I think we have a total of about 8 or 9 trainings that really focus on core areas throughout areas of responsibility. We've actually even worked with POC to develop boards, commissions, and committees training.
Thank you. Commissioner Meredith?
Following up on that, do we have adequate staff for you to provide training, or do we have people throughout the organization that have ancillary duties of providing that training in a facility?
I think it's a shared responsibility across the board. So we have a lot of subject matter personnel that are certified to train. A majority of our training, especially PREA compliance trainings, are dedicated to. There's actual dedicated staff to those trainings that are certified for those trainings. So we do leverage a lot of the resources through STO, but there are trainers within the facilities that are certified trainers to train these trainings. And then there's certain trainings like I mentioned, the POC training. I'm the only person that's certified to train that one, so that you guys get the information directly from me. There's a RVAS training currently that there's, I think, only 2 trainers that are actually been selected by myself that can actually train that one, because there's a lot of interviewing components to it that we really want to make sure that screening tool is delivered in an appropriate manner. So it really depends on the training. We'll really classify what staff is there. And I mean, but we're always constantly filling the ranks, the cadre or the ranks of staff that are certified to be able to do these trainings.
And the other item is just a comment. I see you address my concerns about the investigative process and how that's handled. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners? Hey, Wendy, do we have any written or live public comment?
If we have any live public comment, please come up to the podium if you'd like to make a comment on the PREA item. And if you have a public comment and you're on WebEx, use the little raise your hand function. As we wait for a second to see if we do, I will say I have had the benefit of going through PREA training with Nathan, and then also sitting through the training for providers, which was excellent. And I actually think there's a benefit to going through training with multiple trainers because they tell different stories and have a little different approach. And this is work I've been doing my whole career around preventing child abuse and such related issues, mandated reporting, things like that. And I've learned something in every training that I've gone to through probation. So I really appreciate the thoroughness of that training. Anybody raise their hand during my little speech, Ismail? Okay, no public comment.
Okay, thank you, Director Martinez. As always, a perfect presentation. And again, thank you so much for the information being sent to us early enough for us to review. Much appreciated. Thank you. You're welcome to stay and watch the meeting. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 4, which is to discuss and take possible action on probation's plan to depopulate Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, including an update on the most recent order to show cause hearing and the BSCC approval process. First, we will hear an update from the Probation Human Resource Manager, Deanne Carly, about call out and leave rates as they impact the staffing necessary to keep the facilities in compliance. And then Chief Guillermo Villarosa and Deputy Director Robert Arcos will provide updates. The data Ms. Carly will be discussing in her presentation was provided to the PLC. Thank you. And it is attached to the agenda. We also attached the BSCC's July inspection of Barry J. Nardoff and their timeline as reference for this agenda item. Please proceed, Chief and Ms. Carly.
So I was asked to update reporting that's been provided before. Slight modifications, trying to make sure that I'm including the pertinent information related and not giving you too much ancillary information that you didn't ask for. But of course, I'm prepared to answer, questions related to what was provided. So I don't know if you're planning on showing the report on screen or, okay. So I'll just walk through. What was provided was department staffing data for all employees and then institution staffing data for the juvenile hall and SYTF with budgeted items, active items, and FTE vacancies. Do you want me to give those numbers? Okay. So the department staffing data for all positions, we have 5,263 budgeted full-time positions. We have 3,738 active employees and 1,560 full-time vacancies. For the institutions, Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, we have 794 full-time budgeted positions. We have 532 active employees with 262 full-time vacancies. SYTF, which includes Barry J. Patrick, DKC. SYTF has 337 assigned full-time budgeted positions. We have 284 active employees, and we have 53 full-time employee vacancies. So if any of you are doing the math, sometimes that math is off a little, and I'll explain because we don't always have full-time staff assigned to those full-time vacancies. So we may have 2 staff, for example, part-time sitting again. So sometimes those numbers don't exactly align, but those are the numbers at this time for our staffing data. Any questions on the staffing data?
Commissioner Meredith.
There seems to be a disconnect, and I'm not sure where it's at, because I talk to training staff, they point to HR, talk to HR, they point to backgrounds, whoever does it. We have all these vacancies, but we're putting through 6, maybe 9, 10 people at a time. And I'm trying to figure out why there was such a delay.
Okay, so let me go to the next page and I can explain that a little bit. So on the next page, what was provided? Well, I provided some recruitment outreach strategies just to know what we're doing. Our recruitment unit has been highly emphasized in the last 2 years. We've expanded our recruitment quite a bit. So there's a lot of strategies that we've implemented in 2024 and 25 to try and increase that. But what happened is our entry-level position of DSO GSN, that was previously our entry level, we've stopped recruiting for DSO GSN and we've moved to DPO 1. So whenever we close an exam and we open a new exam, there's always a time lag, right? Because we have to have people apply, we have to review their applications, we have to go through the process of examination before we can place them on a list and we can put them into backgrounds. So for DPO 1, opened November 18th, 2024, we received 4,537 applications as of the end of June. We have accepted 3,040 of those. 373 people are currently pending exams, and we made 685 conditional offers. Of the 685, 23 of those were internal candidates. They've already been promoted to the item. We currently have about 229 candidates in background process. And so the reason we've had 7 DPO 1 trainees is I would ask you to think of a bell curve, right? These are the front runners. These are the first people to get through that background process. The application, the testing, and the background, it takes some time. We've worked very hard in the last 2 years to bring that time frame down, and we believe we're very competitive with other probation departments, sheriff's, fire, all of that, but it still takes time to go through that background process. So what you're seeing with that low number, you're seeing the marathon runners, you're seeing the very first people to get through that background. That means they had no issues, there were no delays, things like that. What we anticipate is as we continue to promulgate, we will start to see more and more numbers come through. So our first promulgation for DPO 1 was March 4th. So promulgation is when we say everybody has finished the exam and these are the valid candidates. That's when we can start to send a conditional offer. So if you look at that timeline, that's why we had 7 people in our first academy that had the DPO 1s, because it's the very front end. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm looking at the background process because that's where I'm being told a lot of the delay is. And I know Sheriff's got 1,500 openings, LAPD's got 1,000. And I'm looking at our numbers, I'm thinking many of these agencies are actually, they have their X number of background investigators, or they've hired retirees to come back and train them as background investigators to try and get through the background backlog in a faster manner. Because we are personnel critical in this department.
We are. We actually have 3 vacancies in our backgrounds unit. We've interviewed candidates and we're planning on making some offers within the next 2 weeks. We also were asked to help out with some of the staffing at LP during this time frame, which obviously, our priority is to do that. But it does delay in a couple of cases, the background process. We do have all of our background staff conducting backgrounds right now. And like I said, we've interviewed internal candidates and we actually have 6 highly qualified candidates for those 3 positions and hope to make offers within the next couple of weeks.
I would suggest maybe being visionary like the other agencies and looking at retirees that want to be trained as background investigators and doing that part-time, or looking at contract services out, as many of the agencies have done, to try and help get rid of that backlog.
Yes.
If I could just jump in here, good morning. And that is exactly something that was already in place. So there were contracted folks out of the district attorney's office to help with the background process. I want to suggest a couple of things here, not negating the fact that.
Okay, Chief, I'm a big boy.
No, not to contradict, but if you take a look at the total amount of time today that it takes to get through the entire process, it has improved significantly. We need to make these hires so that we don't fall back into having this long delay, but I don't think that's where the actual problem is. The real issue here is that we are doing everything possible to get folks trained, and that's why you see academies of 7 people. From a management perspective, I would never want to do an entire academy with the tremendous resources it takes for just 7 people, but we're doing it because we don't want to lose candidates by making them wait longer. So it's an exchange here. We can either wait until we have enough for a full academy of 20, 30 people, or we can go ahead and do more frequent academies at a higher cost just to make sure that we get the 7 or 8 candidates, and that's what we're choosing to do. But the real problem here is that there just aren't enough qualified, interested people that want to come to probation. That's the truth. The truth is that for the large number of folks that put in an initial interest, the ones that are actually qualified and go get through the process is extraordinarily low. I'm going to suggest it's because it's the public facing sort of the identity of probation is in question. We're constantly in the news. I know we've discussed this before, and I don't think anybody would disagree that that makes it tough to get great candidates to want to be part of the department. We've taken a look at sort of what's the right position in terms of what we're asking of our employees, and that's why the class was upgraded to DPO1. Additionally, it has allowed us to be more competitive because of the salary. And initially, one of the concerns that I think folks rightly presented was that by increasing the qualifications, that it was going to be more difficult to get candidates in. That hasn't been the case, but it also hasn't fixed the problem, which is we have more vacancies and we need more qualified candidates than we seem to find in the neighborhood. In addition to just getting entry-level candidates, we are trying to get laterals, and an incentive was put out so that we could hopefully find laterals at either DPO1. That didn't work. So now we have, and I'm not sure, Dan, have we already released the solicitation for DPO?
Yeah, DPO2 lateral is open.
So DPO2 lateral is open with a larger incentive, and we hope that has some positive impact.
Commissioner Prater.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you may have already stated, but I think that, you know, just in case there are new folks listening, I guess I'm having a difficult time understanding that maybe it's presented and I'm just misreading it, but I'm looking at apps received 4537, apps accepted 3,000 plus, right? Pending exams 373, and then the conditional offers made 685. Let's just say that's 665 or so because 23 of those are internal candidates. When you say you have candidates currently in background process 229, but then an academy of 7, can you just walk me through in detail what you're learning about what happens? I can understand the delta between folks that's applying, right, 4,500, and then ending up with 7. But from the number of 229 that are currently in background process and ending up with 7, can you just, I'm not clear about what are the specifics about why only 7. And then if you have that much attrition or that many folks who don't make it through, who clearly going through, it looks like all the other steps, right? From application submission all the way to exam, conditional offer, and backgrounds, that even the delta between 229 and 7 is extraordinarily low. And so are you doing any interviews with folks who don't make it through to find out what is the reason? Is it our candidates withdrawing at that point? Tell me with clarity, what is the issue, what happens, and not just saying we're just having a hard time finding good people feels like a broad stroke. And so can you get more granular about what happens between the 229 who are currently in the background process and why only 7 make it into an academy?
I sure can. I anticipated that you might have questions.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
So, can I just add, can you also explain where the 400 something people are between conditional offers and going through background process, where they are?
Yeah, I sure can.
And at what point the conditional offer,
I will do my best.
just because, you know, at what point the conditional offer is made? Is it before exam, after exam, in between? Just lump it in one,
All right.
one long paragraph.
So this data is not going to align exactly because I tried to give you the data as you asked for it. But as of 7/21, because I asked my teams to give me the most current update. So we have the 685 people that we sent a conditional offer letter to, right? The first step in the background process is to do the live scan. So the way the background process works is legally we have to do the least invasive process to the most invasive process. So there's a process. Go figure. So live scan is the first step. A background file review is the second step. Then medical, then psych and medical are the final steps. So in that first step for the live scan, 138 of those 685 just no showed. And we have practices in place to call them.
Are you reading? You're giving numbers. Are they in front of me too?
Yeah, I have my notes.
Oh, they're in your notes. They're not in front of us. Right, those numbers. Okay.
No. So for live scan, we had 138 people that no showed. We follow up, we call, we remind, we send a postcard, emails, we do our due diligence to try and get them there. But for whatever reason, 138 candidates decision no showed. 68 actually called and said they were withdrawing. There's a variety of reasons that are given. Most are just something else came up, another job. I've changed my mind. There are some who, as the chief pointed out, expressed concern with the department's current state and the stability of their future employment. So pending live scan as of today, we have 16 people of the number, the 685. Of the ones that accepted a conditional job offer, that's about 67% at 463. So 463 of the 685 have moved into the background investigation process. So that's the file review where they fill out a very comprehensive guideline based on the post background folder, asking about, their associates, things like that, their job history, everything from tattoos, affiliations, social media review, all of that is in the background file review. So we have 255 of those people still in background. In the background process, we had 38 withdraw and we had 138 disqualified. So you can be disqualified if you put something in there and then we discover that it's not correct. Like, I resigned. Well, actually, no, you were asked to leave your last employment, things like that. So of the ones, of that number again, we have moved 32 to med and psych. 2 were considered not suitable, so they withdrew from med and psych. 15 are pending med and psych. We have about 15 in med right now and 15 in psych, and we've cleared 15 at this point for final offer.
Commissioner Harris,
My
that was part of your question. And Commissioner Meredith, you look like you have a question.
No, actually, I have a statement. Thank you, Chief, for clarifying this. And for those that are out there in the public, you can't believe everything you read in the media. This is a good organization. We need good people, so apply.
And it helps that it's probation service week, so it's a great time to apply.
I just have one follow on now. I promise I'll get out of the way.
You talk right into the mic, please. Thanks, now.
Sorry, y'all. Just one quick follow up and I'll kind of gather your hair so you can continue your presentation. So has there been, if we have a process, right? And I can certainly appreciate wanting to get the absolute best folks, right, possible. But if a process that starts with 4,500 something folks and nets you 7, doesn't that require us sort of like examine the process by which, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, are there ways that we've been looking at, like, okay, if the goal here is to sort of like, fill these vacant positions so we can truly serve the county and the youth and folks in our care, does the process then need to be looked at differently? I mean, and when has that been under review last? To sort of, I know that perhaps there's some legal sort of like, requirements that we can't avoid, but I'm just wondering, that's a really, that the delta between that number and who it makes it feels extraordinary. And I wonder sometimes, is the process, does it need to be reviewed at all to sort of like get us the result and the outcome that we want? I'm just that's a curiosity of mine. And so your thoughts on that?
No, thank you.
I think in net at 229, 7 are just the ones that are in training.
I get that, but that's the ultimate outcome is that you got a cabinet with 7 people. You start with that with thousands, and then you end up with 7. So in the final analysis, we just heard the details, hundreds, in the currently in background process, are disqualified for whatever reason, right? And so what about this process? You know, it's kind of curious for me, right? That says, why do we get so few people?
Thank you for the opportunity, because this is something that I don't think the public ever really gets to have addressed. I want to be clear, this isn't unique to probation in LA County. This is the state of affairs, certainly for all law enforcement agencies in California. This isn't atypical. The amount of time that we spend in the background process, we're within the norm or better than our partners currently. We still have area for improvement. For example, doing that background process as quickly as we can, humanly possible, and still responsibly. But it's normal to have this large number of candidates and then only have a very small percentage of those that are actually eligible and want to go to the peace officer basic training. What I will tell you is that this is the least rigorous peace officer recruitment process that is still legal and responsible. So that if you were to compare our process to some other agencies, this is the floor. We are only doing the things that are legally mandated by post or close to it. I would not be in support, even if the law didn't require it, to make it less rigorous, because we put folks' freedom uh, as a core responsibility of the decision making that these officers will do day to day. And so we need to know who they are, and we need to know that they can do this job. I think then where we turn is, well, how much of the work we do needs to be peace officers? And I think that's the conversation that we've been having over the course of the last 2 years, which is we need to get this right. We need to make sure that the things that I need a law enforcement officer for are the things that I'm dedicating these positions to, and that I'm putting all the training toward them, and they could do it professionally. And if there's room to have sort of cognate or experts or folks that bring something else to the table, that we hire those folks to be part of the larger team. And we're in the process of doing that. We're certainly haven't ended that. We're still exploring. It certainly has led to the creation of at least 2 other classifications so far. Safety and security specialist classification took away some of the, I shouldn't say take away, it freed up our peace officers to interact with the youth that we have in the facilities rather than use them on the perimeter. The creation of the probation assistant position, which we have just recently started using to be used in the field to have interactions with clients, and do some of those referrals so that we could dedicate the probation officers to where they're absolutely mandated. And we're still open to exploring other classifications or having other departments participate in some of the services that we provide, so that we're best utilizing those probation officers where they're needed, with the knowledge that there isn't a large pool to draw from tomorrow, that all of a sudden we're gonna double or triple the peace officers that we have. I hope that answered some of your.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, and I'll just toss it out again. When we have personnel that are retiring, we should be offering them the opportunity to stay on as a reserve probation officer. The sheriff's department do it, most municipal agencies do it, and they can do their field functions or whatever else they've been doing, but it creates a resource for us. I'm just tossing it out because I think that's an HR function.
It is, and you've been a strong advocate of that. We're currently in the process of creating something between a reserve and an intermittent position for deputy probation officer, so that in addition to utilizing 120 or volunteers, it can be reserve at no cost, that we're also offering the opportunity for those that are not in a position to commit full time or are retired or have another job, that can provide some services that they could be remunerated for that.
Commissioner Ship?
Real quickly, I had a different question, but I want to ask this one because you mentioned it. You spoke about like other departments doing services for the department, and can you speak a little bit more about that and like what duties they can't do just because they're not peace officers?
Yeah, I don't, every time I talk about other departments, I get in trouble for days to come. Folks, don't like for me to speak on their behalf, as I don't like other departments to speak on my behalf. What I will say is that fundamentally, we believe in the interdisciplinary approach. It's been extraordinarily difficult to get there because safety is paramount and the responsibility of probation and probation officers. And so it's our job to create an environment that allows for these other departments or vendors to come in and provide those additional services. And that's where we've been stuck because it requires a certain number of peace officers to create that environment to then be able to bring other folks around. And it's tough to convince folks that no, the way the environment's going to get safer quickly is if we all show up together. And if you keep waiting for this to happen tomorrow, that we're just in this vicious cycle of it's not safe enough to go in, we don't go in, so it's less safe because the youth don't have activities and they don't have other. So we, to be quite honest, we've sort of been stuck in this cycle. What I absolutely want to make sure we're clear on is that the BSCC or the state regulator only counts those peace officers for direct supervision. So that when we come up with solutions that say, I'm going to bring in this other person that's not a probation officer, that doesn't count. While we welcome it, it doesn't relieve us of the staffing requirements.
But like, what I'm asking is like, would that be data or programming or like, is that, I don't know, maybe lunch or like, what are those things that other departments can do that it doesn't go against that state regulator or that BSCC management? Like, what are the things that you are having them do since you said like you are bringing them in?
Yeah, no, we, contrary to popular belief, if you go to one of our facilities on any given day, there are a whole host of folks from other departments and different vendors present, whether it's religious services or they're for educational reasons. So we have teachers, social workers, there's physicians, there's nurses, there are all sorts of people, and we welcome them. Unfortunately, none of those count toward the state requirements, but I believe they improve the environment and they improve the services that we do. So it's tough for me to describe it's probably easier to say what they can't do, because we can have folks come in and provide vocational, educational, art services. It's almost unlimited. It's just that the peace officers have to be there at a certain ratio regardless.
The reason why I asked that because I was questioning whether this was something new or like what the department has been doing where DYD brings in contractors or another department brings in contractors. I wanted to know. I believe that it was something completely different. But I understand now. My second question is, did you give any more thought to the discussion we had last time about having a pipeline between people who already work with the same population and to like this probation application situation. We got we I want to say we have a bunch of housing. I mean, Commissioner Prater, and you probably could speak on this a little better than I can, but specifically with housing these youth, there are youth housed all across LA County with people who meet those standards of bachelor degree, no convictions, who would be an ideal candidate. Have you given more thought to trying to recruit some of those people to be a part of the department?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great idea as a different pipeline. I have to confess, I've done very little on the recruitment piece personally since I was last here. There have been a couple of other matters at hand. Thank you for the reminder. I just have not had an independent meeting with the recruitment side, but I liked it the first time. Thank you for the reminder. And maybe with Anna here, that's even better that.
Well, I can tell you of the class of 7 currently in the academy, I went and did orientation, and I was very happy to speak with one young lady who was previously a subcontractor providing educational services and fell in love with what she was doing and applied and is now an employee of the department. So we do outreach to all. If there's a way that we can do that comfortably, because we also don't want to poach too much, but you know, obviously
We do want to poach.
yes, but in partnership, Maybe that's the P word we want to use. In partnership, we would love to see that. I mean, I've worked for other public agencies, mental health agencies. I've seen what happens when people move from one area of the business to another and how it supports and just strengthens. So obviously that is a candidate pool we'd be very interested in as long as they meet the criteria and are able to pass that background.
I think one of the, back to Commissioner Meredith's recommendation, longstanding recommendation on strengthening our reserve program, that really is a place for folks to learn actually what the job is before they make a full commitment, and they can still do it while they're working somewhere else. So we'll get together with personnel and maybe the reserve program for those folks may be a great way for an introduction.
All right, Commissioner Prater.
I just want to flag here that I have a question once you finish your presentation.
Okay, so just to go back on track, I do want to remind you the 7 is not the final outcome from the numbers. The 7 is just who's made it cross the finish line. Our hope is that just like in a marathon, or I'll use a sprinkler system, you turn it on, some of those old creaky systems, takes a while for the water to get all the way to the last sprinkler, but we're going to follow it all the way through. So our goal is to see those numbers increase. And preliminary data, because again, we're still in the process, but we are seeing more of this group of candidates coming to the live scan than we did previously, coming with all their information completed with a better understanding. We think that's in part because of some of the tools that we've provided in how to fill out the application, some of the support, but we are seeing better outcomes just preliminarily. So that's something we are tracking, and we're hoping to show that, you know, when we get to the end analysis of this particular recruitment, that we can show, hey, we had better alignment. We were able to reach candidates that were, you know, instead of only getting 12% through, we were able to get 20% through. So those are some of the things that we are tracking. It's a little early in the data. Like I said, those 7 they're your marathon runners. They crush that finish line first, but hopefully they'll be followed by hundreds and hundreds of others. That's our goal. So moving on, the question was about terminations. So I provided termination data from last year and this year. I hope you had a chance to review it. Are there any questions about that? Did you want me to run through basically for sworn terminations in January, December last year, 2024? We had 379. And for this year so far, we have 118.
When you say terminations, is that people that were relieved of their duties for some reason, or does that include retirees?
That includes every reason. So that's personal reason. That actually includes transfer. If somebody left our department and went to another county department, any separation. Termination is just the code in the system that we use, but it's not a negative code. It doesn't mean discharge. It just means they have terminated their service with probation. And I'll be honest, we expected to see for the last few years larger numbers just based on our demographics and our staffing. We expected to see larger numbers of retirements. Of course, it's hitting us very hard when we're trying to recruit at the same time. In a perfect world, for every retirement, you have a new person coming in. But as we've talked about the hiring, I did give you academy hires for 22, 25, so you could see the numbers. As a reminder, we had a hiring freeze until 2022. We were still hiring people because what we did is we had a previous promulgation, and as long as we've made that conditional offer, so we never want to turn off our hiring. So we had strategies in place, and that's why you see that we had 67 hires in 22, even though we were under hiring freeze. That was the tail end of a previous promulgation, a previous group of people who had gone into and accepted a conditional offer. But then you can see in 23, the numbers rose dramatically because we were able and opened up a new recruitment. And then you start to see them change in 2024 and 25 because we changed our recruitment strategy. We went from that one classification, closed it, and opened up a different classification. So again, the startup time impacts, but we're hoping as we go into 26 that we'll see numbers more like 23 and higher, obviously, is our goal. But you can tell from the numbers that we have a gap. And we're working very hard on filling that gap because we have vacancies. That's what the first set of data that I gave you was, all the vacancies, the hires and the terminations. It's simple math. We have a job in front of us and we are doing our best to focus on recruitment and hiring. Any questions on the hiring data? Okay, so we'll move to leave metrics. These leave metrics, I provided numbers and stats basically as requested for the 6-month period. So number of staff on continuous leave of absence, as of the end of June 25, we had 541. If you go back to January 25, 584. So there's some fluctuation there. But if you take an average, it's pretty stable overall. These are people coming in, people coming out. There are different people on leave. There are different reasons for their leaves. But that's the continuous leave of absence department-wide. Number of staff with approved intermittent leave department-wide, 566 in June, 594 in January, and you'll see that same sort of fluctuation in the chart. Going to the number of staff on continuous leave in the institutions, as of the end of June 25, we had 170. In January, we had 153. You'll see some fluctuation there, not the same fluctuation as in the other chart. You'll see some ups and downs there, where it was 153 in January, 161 in February, 149 in March, then climb back up 156 in April, 166 in May, and 170 in June. Number of staff with approved intermittent leaves in institutions, January was 175, in June 216.
Just for people who weren't here the last time you presented, can you just describe or explain the difference between continuous and intermittent?
Absolutely. So continuous leave means exactly that. I'm approved by a doctor to be off from November to January to recover from an illness, to, receive care, surgery, things like that. I'm on continuous leave, so I'm off work continuously. Intermittent leave under FMLA, that's a leave that you can request. So I'll use myself as an example. I have an intermittent leave on file to care for my parent. My parent needs doctor's appointments, things like that. So once in a while, I will request time off on my intermittent leave to take my senior mother to a doctor's appointment. I can also have an intermittent leave for myself if I have a condition. Let's say I have migraines, so I can request, certain days off. And intermittent leave, the challenge with that is it is approved, but because we can't predict it. So with a continuous leave, we know Deanna's off work for 3 months. We need to get someone behind her and get that taken care of. But intermittent leave typically comes up if it's for a doctor's appointment, for example. Yeah, you can give a week's notice, however long. But if it's a condition that flares, generally we don't get any notice. It's a same day absence. So it does impact operations pretty significantly. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Meredith, followed by Commissioner Harris.
Yeah, on the call outs, my sources, 2 of the facilities indicate that on 3-day holiday weekends, the same people called out all the time. Do we have a way of tracking that?
Okay, so I'll wrap up the leave and then I'll go to the call outs, but I will say I don't oversee the call out data. The call out data is overseen by operations in our scheduling unit. So the data comes from them. What HR does to assist with the call out, though, is we have several targeted things in place to address this absenteeism. So when you say if a pattern is seen by an employee, yes, it's being addressed pretty much immediately. We're focused on no call, no show, overall attendance, whether it's within our guidelines, and we're focused on tardiness as well, because all of those things impact, right, our ability to serve. And when we started focusing on tardies, for example, in February, we didn't focus on 5 or 10 minutes. We gave people, we know that it can be challenging to park at LP and get into the building. We're talking about people an hour or more tardy. And what we saw in February is as soon as we started to address it, the numbers started to drop. But every time there's a change, scheduling, holiday, we see those numbers go up again, but they drop. Overall, we've been pretty happy with the impact of addressing them because our callouts and our attendance has improved. Overall, it has improved. In fact, if you look at the call out data here and the call out data that was provided at the last meeting, you can see those percentages have gone down. So overall, the staff are aware that that's something that's important and that we're tracking it and we are addressing it.
Commissioner Harris had a question on leave. Right?
On the leave part. So I have this distinct memory of my very first POC meeting asking you the same question, but I want to make sure I'm tracking this right. So I'm looking at Los Padrinos and I'm looking at the first page, and right now you have 532 active employees.
Mhm.
Does that include or not include the 146 unique employees who are on continuous leave?
That includes.
Okay.
So 130 is a subset.
Okay. So you are, whoever is the superintendent of LP is actually technically working with 386 employees that are available to come to work. Someone who's on continuous leave is not available to come to work. Is
Correct.
that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay. And then I really appreciated your examples of what intermittent leave means, because I think that's really helpful, that caring for a parent or having a migraine flare up, like we can't discount those people as coming to work, but they may not come tomorrow because they have a migraine and they have to stay in bed. So the numbers are, I guess, lower than what and this is not accounting the recruitment, the vacancies, but actually just the available people to come to work.
Correct.
Okay.
And to that point, so if you look at, page 3, I think it is, it's broken down by Los Padrinos and SYTF, just above the call out data. At Los Padrinos, we have 130 unique employees because again, you can have more than one intermittent leave. I can have one for myself, one for a child, one for a parent. You can have more than one intermittent leave on file. So we want to make sure we know how many unique, because we may have 500 intermittent leaves, but we only have 100. So at Los Padrinos, we have 130 employees unique that have approved intermittent leave. On continuous leave, 146. On 4850 leave, 33. And on light duty, 32. So you subtract all of that from your number on the first page of 532, and that explains why deployment is so critical.
Thank you for that. And I just want to just build upon Commissioner Harris's question about, so I have two questions. The first question is, and perhaps you've already given this because there are lots of tables to kind of make meaning of here, but is there a way that, do you have data, and maybe this data is retrospective, right? Where we say we have 1,500 vacancies or so, right? And then we have the number of call-outs and continuous and intermittent leaves, and then people who just are late to work, et cetera. So on any given day in any of our facilities, there's a number of staff that are required that we need, right? So if every position was filled and no one called out and everyone was there, it was a perfect day. What is the number of staff that is needed in each facility? And then if we look back in retrospect over 2024 and say, how many people actually showed up on each of those days in the facilities? Like, do we have data that tells us in LP, there should be, in an ideal case, there should be 50 people that should be there, right? And then what has the data told us about like how many people actually show up to work, given the call outs, given the continuous, the intermittent, and all the other factors that lead people not being on site. What do those numbers look like? I think that'd be helpful to understand sort of like what is the picture of like what this problem of staffing is. I'm thinking about that because one of the supervisors said in response to the the receivership by the state that the issue of like staffing is still going to be an issue, right? And what was scant, there was scant information in that press conference yesterday that talked about, well, what is the plan to solve that? Like, I'm looking at this, and I hope that, I don't know what solution the receiver is going to have to address this issue. We have all the vacancies, the call outs, intermittent, continuous. So what is the number of folks that we need in each facility every day to actually give the care that our youth need? And then who's actually showed up? How many bodies have actually been in the buildings each day? Do you have that data?
We do. I appreciate your questions because it's allowing us a platform to explain what we've been doing for the last 2 years. It is everything you're describing. It is using every possible sort of prediction mechanism, and yet being unable to know who's going to show up. So, for example, we know what the minimum number is to meet the state requirements. That's listed out. Then we've taken into account the average number of callouts and added that to the deployment. And then we've taken into account what day of the week it is, because there's different behavior on weekends or whether it's a holiday. But you cannot run a detention facility guessing just how bad the behavior of your employees are going to be. It just becomes impossible. And so if I count on 50 employees showing up and I have to schedule 75 because I know that only 50 of them are going to show up, this is sort of a never ending, you're chasing yourself, because if I overstaff, then I have less availability for the next shifts. I have less people available to do field services. If I get it wrong, then I'm under the minimums. This is insane behavior. I want to make something very clear that this is not normal. And I keep saying that. I need to find a better term. Let me make this clear. I challenge you to find any other agency in which there's such a high percentage of employees not available to work, or another law enforcement agency where the behavior by employees is matched by the generosity of the civil service process. And so we've now been discussing for 2 years that if we can identify employees that are consistently tardy or calling out, that there should be some punitive action, because that endangers their fellow employees. And it also puts us in a predicament where we cannot provide appropriate services to young people in our care. And yet here we are, because despite hundreds and hundreds of disciplinary actions, we've barely made a dent in behavior by employees. So either they're incapable of doing it or unwilling to do it. Now, I don't want to besmirch the extraordinary employees that are pulling double and triple duty and are keeping us afloat. But it is also true that this is sort of unprecedented, irresponsible behavior that has led us here. And at the core of this is really the fact that we're having to guess who and how many people come to work, and the fact that they get to continue to behave this way and continue to be our employees, because the civil service process does not see this behavior as catastrophic as I do. I think that if you're a no call, no show, and that means that someone may have to work 16 hours and that they're missing picking up their child, or that we go below state minimums because you didn't show up to work and we end up in a receivership or any of those things, to me, that's actionable behavior. You are unfit to be a peace officer. I seem to be out of line with the county's current process.
And that's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna no comment on that part, but I hear you. But my second question is related to you talked about, Chief, two different classifications that were created in order to, I guess, to sort of provide the service that the youth need inside, that don't necessarily need the peace officer sort of like requirement or designation. Can you tell me more about, or talk more about where you are in that process? You know, what, like, if those positions have been posted, how many people have been hired in those new classifications? And because they don't meet the peace officer sort of like, you know, that bar, right? And so I know that we still run into the problem of, you know, the minimum that is needed in a facility to meet the state requirement to operate a facility safely and et cetera. But tell me more about the role you imagine these two new positions playing, and with respect to the care that is happening, and what relief these two new positions are providing, you know, to our peace officer staff. And so we just would love to know. I have the data about how many folks apply for the DPO1 position and go through that whole process. But can you share more about, you know, where you are, you know, in the progress with those two new positions, and if they've been finalized, who's applied, are they hired, et cetera?
So the DPO1 position is an existing position. What we did was we consolidated the many different classifications we had, made an internal assessment that what we're requiring of our staff is much more than when the other positions were created. And so we've elevated the entry-level position to DPO1. It is also more highly compensated. That was a significant switch. We're still in the process of it, and many of our current employees also qualify to be elevated to that position. Moving forward, it allows us to utilize classifications in more locations. And again, I said from the beginning, it makes us more market competitive. With respect to the non-peace officer classifications, those are positions that are working to support the functions, but don't replace the need, and really don't have an impact on the services that are provided to the youth. It's the other way around. What it does is it takes services that aren't direct youth and don't have direct interaction with youth. So the probation assistant really is for the field and the adult field, because we know that we've significantly impacted our ability to provide adult field services. And because it's unlikely that we're either going to miraculously have a high percentage of our staff that has requested accommodations come back to work, or hire quickly. There isn't, like I said, this pool that we're waiting on. We've had to reimagine how we provide those services. The other position I mentioned was a security position, so that we're not using our peace officers essentially as security guards. That's been deployed. That position, we already hired folks into it, and it's currently deployed at the two facilities. The probation assistant position we've started initially was being used internally for folks that were going through a process in which they were leaving the peace officer classification, but we still want them on our team. They still have subject matter expertise. It's a position that would be made available to them if they qualified. We're now at the point where we haven't had enough of that movement, so we're opening, or we will be opening it up to hire externally for that position, and hopefully that'll sort of expedite the amount of assistance. Did I miss any part of it?
Yeah, thank you.
So Ms. Carla had a hard stop, and so if we can just let her finish her presentation,
Thank you.
which we've passed.
Okay. So if there's no other questions on the leave questions, the call out data has been provided. Again, that's a collaborative effort between operations and our scheduling unit, but the data has been provided. And I noted from the last presentation that overall the averages have dropped a slight bit, which is hopeful that all of our processes to address call outs, no calls, no shows are making some impact. So you can see here at Barry J. Nardo, for example, between January and June, it varied from a high of 11 down to 8. So it looks like it's probably about a 9%, somewhere in that ballpark, overall average. If you look at the next page, callouts by staff type, we broke it down as requested previously between staff that were assigned and deployed staff. And you can see the averages there. Again, a little bit lower than the last time this was reported. So that's hopeful that it will continue to get lower, that we have callouts. Los Padrinos from January to June, 8%, 9%, and 8%. So a little bit lower average of callouts showing there at about 8.25%. And then callouts by staff type, again, on the next page, it's broken down into the LP assigned staff versus the deployed staff. And what it appears to show is it just depends on the shift in the time. I don't think there's any correlation that can be drawn between the deployed staff and the LP assigned staff, meaningful data from this example, but it is broken down so you can see it as was requested. So the data from the call out reports is now cross-referenced with the data from the scheduling app. As I explained last time presented, what we found was the call out app is a simple app. If I call it and I report that I'm calling out, it's going to mark 1. If I hang up halfway through and then I go, oh, I better call in, it's going to report 2. So we have to cross-reference that to make sure that Deanna called out on the shift that I was actually supposed to, and I wasn't already pre-approved for vacation. You know, so there were a lot of things. We were basically over-reporting the call out by reporting it just straight data. Now, actually, thanks to your request at the last meeting, we're cross-referencing that data for the same thing, basically to make sure that we're giving you individual numbers that we've checked against. There's no duplicative. And so that also may account for the percentage change. And that's it for my information. Any additional questions?
Commissioner Ship.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about like around staff and morale in general, right? We've heard mixed reviews from staff around some are happy, some are really dedicated to the position, some aren't. Do you guys track a few things? So do you guys track attrition of new hires? How many people leave, right? The retainment of new hires, how many people are there in 6 months? How many people of those same new hires are there 2 years? How many people are there to become field officers? Are those things that you track?
Yes.
Would we be able to get that type of data?
Yes.
Because I do want to point to staff morale, and like I said, we've heard mixed reviews, and so we want to make sure that it's not a thing where new hires come in. As we seen, you said we've hired around 300 people. We want to make sure those 300 people stay there at some point, and I'm hoping that isn't because of staff morale or anything, but that they just stay there.
Yeah, we're trying to track any metric that may help us to impact the hiring, the recruitment, the retention, all of that. We get data requests in HR pretty much daily, and everybody's data request is slightly different. So we're very responsive, but know that a lot of this is spreadsheets. It's a lot of staff time, and it's a point in time process. For example, for our leave reports, it's a cumulative process for some of our others. We're tracking everything. We want to be very responsive, but we want to make sure that what we give you makes sense too, and that we're giving you, people may ask for something, but what they really want is something else. So any request that we receive, we will do our best. And if we don't have the data, we'll explain to you why we don't have that data. And if we do, we'll explain what we're presenting.
No, thank you. I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Ms. Carly. Chief.
Just to piggyback on that, morale is low. And we will provide you all the information that we can. Rest assured, we've looked over this data and what can be done time and time again. I can help you skip right to the analysis. The issue here is don't know what staff can show up on any given shift. Usually the way that you staff for an operation like this is with a relief factor, 1.5, 1.75, let's say even 1.8. If we're functioning now, probably 3 to 4 as in order to make that's impossible. And morale is low. Our staff is exhausted. They don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They're doing jobs that they didn't anticipate they would have to do under appalling conditions. That's tough. Our hiring strategy, probably at this point, the best it can do is keep up with attrition. It's not going to fill those other positions. Yet, having said all that, that's not the problem. The problem is the number of staff that we have on the books exceeds the number of staff I would need to run a facility. They're not available to do the work. And unless the entire county thinks that it is wise, appropriate, fiscally prudent to hire 4 employees per position, that's the situation we're in. I don't know of a budget that could support that. I don't know where we'd get the employees to do that. And really, it's the definition of insanity. And so they're either something different has to happen here because chasing a recruitment strategy isn't going to solve this in the short term. And again, to use it for the 12th time, to be clear, you know, in a moment here, you'll probably hear from the union to tell you that this is caused by a probation's lack of hiring or a hiring freeze. We need to stop that nonsense. Since I've been here, we have been open for hiring to the point where we will do an academy for 7 people. The number of people, again, to use common vernacular, on the books exceeds the number of employees that we need. However, different than every other agency, they are unavailable to do this work for one reason or another.
No, I'll pass it to you, Commissioner Meredith. But the reason why I'm asking this is because, right, from 2022 to 2025, we see around 300 hires, but here, just in 2024, we see 379 who have been terminated. So I'm trying to make sure that a big chunk of that 300 hires that we did have are not leaving within 6 months or to a year, and that we're keeping people on.
They have been. They have been. We've run some numbers and it is much higher than we expected, which is why we're focused on some definite retention strategies for our newer staff. Because yes, it is heartbreaking for as hard as the team is working to bring people on, to lose them within 6 months at 50% or more.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yeah, Chief, just as a matter of information, I've been doing this 23 years. And yes, for the union guys, you all know me. I'm an old union vice president, but I'm also management. And it's an organizational culture that goes back decades, Chief, predates you, much of what is because of contracts or benefits granted by the Board of Supervisors during negotiations that has created it. We have a lot of hardworking people that come to work, but there is a number because of cultural history here that have taken advantage of the situation.
And go ahead.
Sorry, Chair Mundo. So then what is the solution? I guess I hear the problem. You have quite the conundrum, right? We have this, you know, getting folks in the door and qualify folks in the door is a challenge. You know, you have a workforce that you have to pray and hope and wish show up. And so if I think in an earlier comment, you alluded to, like, you know, why can't action be taken against folks who don't show up to work? But even if you were able to do that, then that only puts you further in the hole, right? Because then you'd have even less people, right? We don't have enough people that we were bringing into the door new. And if we were to, by some action, you know, I'm just gonna say it plainly, get rid of folks who aren't performing, that you end up, you know, cutting off your nose to spite your face type situation. And so then what solution have you and your team put forward to the Board of Supervisors to sort of say, here is what we believe it will take to turn this ship around? Or are you guys just like, my hands are up in the air, I have no idea how the hell to get this on track? Tell me what you guys have offered in order to resolve this.
You've never heard me say I'm out of ideas. That is not part of our vocabulary. The truth of the matter is that when we're dealing with organizational change, it takes time. And so many of the strategies are sound, but they take time. And what we don't have in this county is a lack of pressure from external oversight that takes much of the energy and resources of the department. And so we have POC, let me correct myself.
I was going to clarify.
For folks. The direction that the department takes is we're forced to pivot and do things that are not operationally sound because, for example, the BSCC has a particular finding which doesn't allow the time for correction. I don't want you to misconstrue that. I'm not saying that our oversight bodies are incorrect in their findings. The manner in which we can get back on track requires lengthy correction, not 60 or 90 days. And every time we move, it sets us back in being able to do that. But I'll put that aside because that's a chief complaining about oversight boards and managing the department. The real issue here is that I disagree with the way you described. I do need to know who the employees are that are professionals. And even if that's less folks, it creates stability. Instability is the greatest harm that we have. It's the guessing, it's the knowing what we can count on tomorrow, which is impossible to manage. It also creates internal friction and discord between the different bureaus and employees because folks see that I just worked 16 hours and this other person didn't come to work because there was a fight that they wanted to go attend. And yet both of us continue to get the same salary and both of us continue, I'm exhausted, why am I doing someone else's work? That internal friction is the opposite of what law enforcement officers should be supporting each other. And so I disagree with that. We need an action that gets us to who is ready, willing, and able to do the work and who is not, so we know how many employees we actually have, and then we have vacancies to fill. Once we have that, then we can truly implement the interdisciplinary approach in which our partners and other folks that aren't supplanting the ratio requirements, but that can have an impact on the environment inside the facilities can really, take hold and take foot. That's only one thing. The conditions, the salaries, all of those things for the employees that we have are important. We're currently under negotiation, so I'm not going to speak in detail, but the level of work that we're requiring dictates that we need to have a conversation. If I want you to perform at this level, am I paying you adequately? Do you have the right type of retirement to account for the physical exposures that you're going to have? Do you have a training center and professional training? All of those things matter. We have to address that with the staff that we have if we're going to ask them to remain with us as well. These are all things that we've started going down that road, but that at every 30, 60, 90 days, I'm just for a brief second going to go back to the complaining chief part, are derailed. These aren't things that can be done quickly. These are things where we need community partnership to say, this is the 2-year plan. We need some relief for those 2 years. We cannot every 60 days be changing if you believe in it and if you think that that's where we want to go.
When I visit Los Padrinos, I get there at about 5 a.m. And I usually go on holidays because that's when you see the professionals. And I've been there enough times now that I recognize the people that are going in. And we always talk about the people who are not showing up, but I just want to lift up the people that do show up. And I want to share this. The last time I was there were no less than 4 staff that walked in either holding games or puzzles. They sit next to me and they're not happy. Morale has always been an issue. 30 years in the department, it's all perspective. There's always been somebody who's unhappy. It's a county agency, just part for course. But there is a core of staff that are showing up and they show up on the holidays and they show up before 6. And I've been there enough to recognize the faces now. So just be mindful of that. We really have to lift these people that are coming to work. So maybe we can move on now, Chief, with the other subjects that you have to cover today that people have come here and packed the house to see and hear.
And since I took most of Deanna's time, I'll be brief. The two issues I have to sort of update you on is the latest hearing with respect to the depopulation plan, Judge Espinoza, and then the filing by the Attorney General with respect to seeking receivership. And so maybe I'll do that in order. At the last Friday at the hearing with Judge Espinoza, the depopulation plan, it was essentially an update and to determine if it's still a feasible plan and should move forward, or if in fact the original order should take place. The hearing, a new hearing was set for September, mid-September. No changes to the depopulation plan. Updates were given with respect to where we are with seeking BSCC approval to use NIDOR for the juvenile hall for those that are expected to eventually be SYTF, and the utilization of Kilpatrick as an all-girls campus. The order was amended for probation to moving forward, provide the ISD plans with the construction projects and those due dates. I can only assume there was some question as to whether the aggressive dates that I have provided are in fact feasible. My statement was that the first week of August, we would be ready to, from a physical plant perspective, to do all of the moves, the Kilpatrick, the Nydorf, and the Page moves. The only thing would be pending approval from BSCC on those. Part of the update was also the most recent finding from BSCC in our request to utilize Nydorf for a juvenile hall in addition to an SYTF as two separate facilities on one site. BSCC chose to conduct an assessment of SYTF to determine if we had remedied the juvenile hall deficiencies from the past. And they found 3 areas in the SYTF side that needed remedy. We believe we have fixed those and submitted for technical assistance to BSCC, and of course we'll await their answer. But so that's the update with respect to the. Should I pause for questions on that? And then the other piece is that, as I'm sure you're all aware, that the Attorney General has indicated that he'll be seeking receivership. There's a hearing, I think, being conducted today it's a technical hearing in which, they'll decide a future date, 30 or 60 days for the state to be heard and for the county to provide our facts, whether a receiver in order to remedy the noncompliance items in the settlement agreement should be named. That's the. I don't know that there's much more specifics I can give with respect to that, other than what the Attorney General has said publicly, but I'm happy to try to answer any of those.
Commissioner Harris?
First, a technical question. So I observed in the motion that the county council was served. Is that who's going to be representing the county and the department in the Superior Court hearing?
County council's there today.
Okay.
Moving forward, whether it'll be private counsel or not, I'm not sure.
Okay. I know O'Melveny and Myers has been representing the department, I assume at your request, on the BSCC appeals process. Would that be?
That represent the county.
They represent the county.
Yes.
So I listened a lot during my colleagues today had a lot of questions for Ms. Carlisle, and I was listening a lot. And it was, I'm glad we got to this point of the meeting. And I think it's really important to talk about staffing issues and what the issues are. And I appreciate hearing from you and that you're here today talking about your perspective on staffing. I don't think anyone, I mean, you've been in this role for about 2 years, right? And my understanding is you were not an employee of the department before that. You came from Sacramento. Is that right? So no one thinks this originated. I mean, this is, I think everybody in this room, if we can all agree on one thing, this has been an issue for a long time. There's always been good people, and there's always been major staffing issues and frankly, major conditions issues. And that's, I just can't go without talking about what this means and the conditions that it creates in the juvenile hall, which is really what I think we have to talk about. That's why the county's in Superior Court right now, why the AG has opted to step in the way it's not just the BSCC and the depopulation plan that we're talking about, but independently, right? There's been the AG overseeing a lot of the same issues. And the way the AG has explained it is they had to go through a number of really serious legal steps. And I hear, your complaint about the short timeline, but the short timeline, at least on the BSCC staffing, I mean, there was non-compliance earlier in 2024, and then there was a little bit of time where it was everything was in compliance, and then it's not. So it's not, I think it's a little, my perspective is that it's a bit of a, it's a bit rosy to say that, that these are really short timelines and it's impossible to make moves and there's long-term issues when this is long-term cultural shift when really on the other side of that, there's been so much suffering for a long time, right? So much suffering of kids, so much suffering of staff, so much suffering of culture, so much, I mean, the point of the department, at least on the youth side, and the point of the youth justice system is to rehabilitate young people, right? To leave them in a better spot than when they came in. And we really have to reckon with that as we're talking about all of these technical issues, HR, morale, but on the flip side of that, like that leads to, so if 3 staff are required for a unit, only 2 show up, what does that mean? That means maybe much more room confinement on that shift for the young people. That means potentially less rec time. That means potentially, not getting to a medical appointment because no one's there to safely transport, to walk a kid from their unit to the unit. All of the, conditions of confinement that are talked about in the BSCC, Title 15 regulations, in the Youth Bill of Rights, all of these things that are really talking about basic standards, and I'm talking a lot. I'll try to wrap it up, but I just, I just have to uplift all of the consequences and all of the mental and physical and emotional safety issues that come up for young people that are under the county's care that are a result of the culture that you're talking about trying to change, of the staffing issues that you're talking about trying to change. And, you talked, I think, about the definition of insanity and trying to do the same thing. But, one of the things that I think you and I have and publicly disagreed about is the number of children that are detained in the county facilities at this point in time with the staffing that we know is pretty stagnant, right? Staffing, I think we can agree, like it's great that 7 people have graduated, but we saw the numbers of attrition, we saw the numbers of continuous leave, we saw the numbers of intermittent leave and how that impacts staffing. And, I'm not gonna, I don't think we need to go into it. I think there's, the the court has made an order based on your global plan, depopulation plan, but it also, it's concerning that numbers of youth that are in Los Padrinos continue to rise, and that we're just leaving that aside at this point and trying to think creatively about the number of kids that are in the facilities and the number of staff that you have to safely supervise them. Sorry, that was a comment and not a question, but there you go.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I hope I don't come across as an apologist, because I've said time and time again, I won't, for the areas in which we're failing. And there have been areas of improvement in spite of the overall noncompliance. And coming from operations, it makes a difference to me if the area of noncompliance is directly tied to lack of care for a young person. Those are the areas in which we jump in immediately and provide all of the resources that we can. And so, for example, the 3 areas at Nydorf, we had the 60 days to do it, but we took 2 weeks to remedy them. We think they're important. There's something that has to happen. But there's a significant difference between that and sort of the adults talking past the conditions for the kids. And many of the areas of noncompliance are technical areas that were never tied to the well-being or constitutional requirement for care of the young people. That's the area where I complain and I say, look, because we're caught between these regulatory bodies and state versus county, ultimately it's a disservice to the young person. We know the things that actually matter on a day-to-day basis when they wake up. That's where our resources should be, versus I'm having to do all of these moves and things and resources because of a stipulated agreement. And I have to produce these documents that are not directly tied to improving the conditions for the young person. So I'm neither saying that, man, we did a terrible job and it's taken far too long, but I am saying when we have limited resources and we're doing this for a quarter of the state's population, right? This isn't just one of 58 or 59, right? This is a significant portion of the state, that there has to be a different approach with a focus on the conditions for the young person versus these administrative bodies sort of competing and being adversarial. And so my frustration and concern for the move for receivership is that it's more administrative and less focus on what happens to the young person. And because I've yet to see how engaging with the same bodies or or to put it a different way, if I still have a responsibility to maintain a juvenile hall, how does this impact that? Aside from more expensive oversight from experts that really have little to do with what actually happens to the young person. I think in a way we're expressing the same frustration. We may have a different view on how to get there. Someday we're not, it's my hope that we don't disagree that I don't have the option to just find more community locations for many of the young people that I have in custody, that is something to take up with the individual judges. I know we disagree on that. I probably shouldn't have even mentioned it. I'm not trying to, but that, okay. I know it's not today. Okay. But that the focus on what the experience for the young person that we have should be the priority, and that we should arrange. It would be different if there was evidence that this department or this county is indifferent to the condition of the young people. I don't think that's the case. I think that if you talk to anybody on the management team, that's just not the case. We could disagree on what we think is possible, But it's certainly not that, you have a probation staff or even a board of supervisors that's saying, nothing to see here, just go away. That's not the case.
But with all due respect, the AG is talking about abuses. They're talking about unsafe conditions. They've been monitoring them. I know it was a press conference, so, but that is at the core of what a lot of the issues are. There's a brand new sexual abuse lawsuit. There's the gladiator fights. I mean, this, right? And these are not one-off things. And I think that's the point that we've gotten to. So, I don't think anyone's saying that anyone's doing a terrible job, but I really want to call out loud and very plainly that there are major and serious, again, emotional, physical, sexual violations of young people that are happening in the county's care that are unacceptable. And that's the point that we're at.
I hear you. Press conferences are political, and the facts will be borne out in court with respect to the receivership. I can tell you that to say that the Attorney General had to step in because of these fights is not the whole story. I have to remind folks, it was probation's new practices that led to the uncovering of this, and it was probation who worked for the last, I forget how long it is, 18 months, dedicating investigators to assist in getting to this point. So I'm unsure how an external entity says, look, we did this. You mean you helped us? That's very different. That would suggest, if you just take it by the press conference, that there needs to be a receiver because we're incapable of identifying and investigating wrongdoing. That's not the case. At the press conference, it was said that these ODs, that the reason it's so important, you would be led to believe, for a receiver to step in now versus a year ago, and they point to the ODs. And which ODs? Facts matter. We had incidents, but as I've ad nauseum publicly stated, simply utilizing Narcan or taking someone to a hospital does not mean they were either under the influence of an opiate or that they were at risk of ODing. It's extraordinarily important for me, they're under my care, whether in fact those things occurred. They didn't. So facts matter. I don't know how much we should delve into it. Clearly, our facts will be presented in court, but simply taking sort of a surface approach to it and saying that that directly lines up with the conditions for safety and welfare, the facts matter. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Ship.
I mean, specifically, like when we talk about facts, right? Like when we talk about these young people, one of the big issues in Los Padrinos and Barry J, as we just heard, was room confinement. We talk about these overdoses. We've seen 10 plus overdoses, right? That is an issue. In the last 45 days, we've seen that, right? Young people who are overdosing, staff who are overdosing, that is an issue, right? So when we talk about room confinement, these young people need substance abuse counseling. They need programming. They need things to get them out their rooms because, and as you'll probably hear from public comment, young people are going to use drugs if they're bored, right? And so these are issues that need to be remedied, not only for the look of probation, because I think it'll remedy that problem as well, but it'll remedy some of the issues that you are having, the incidents that you are having. We should be checking these kids' rooms every couple of hours and seeing if they're doing drugs, or we should be able to, safety checks shouldn't be an issue, or use of force shouldn't be an issue. This should be a setting where where young people feel safe and that they are getting everything that they need. And I'm not saying that you're doing a bad job at all either. I'm saying that the department, it just needs a little work. And you have to be willing to put that work in and understand where the problems are really coming from. The, like I said, safety checks, room confinement, and use of force were your last few. Those were also something that was present on Los Padrinos. And so as we see young people overdose, I get that you're saying that the facts matter, but that is a fact that young people are overdosing as well as staff. And so we need to address these issues. I get the facts matter, but we need to address these issues because these are facts.
Again, I respect the commissioner's perspectives. I hear them. I take what you say seriously. I can't let stand that the overdoses are a fact. An overdose to me is that someone had an opiate, for example, and they had to be taken to the hospital. There's no report that has been presented that says that. There is confusion because we have an early warning system that we send out, including to this board, when there is, for example, Narcan use or taken to the hospital. But if you're taken to the hospital cleared and no opioids are found in you, that's not an overdose. So again, the technicality of it in a way doesn't matter because the larger issue is the conditions for the young people. But it does matter if we're going to court saying that the young people are at risk of death due to overdose, and none of them are found to have any of these substances in their system after they're taken to the hospital. That's what I mean by the facts matter. Room confinement, for example, I don't disagree. We have to do better. One of the major things that before anything else is that we need to make sure that the young person in our care with frequency is checked on and is okay. But if the finding by the state is that you didn't document appropriately versus you didn't do it, those things are different from an operational standpoint for me to fix it. Those things are different. And so if a report comes back and says, I'm not saying you inappropriately place them in room confinement, you produce the wrong paperwork for it. It matters to me versus you didn't check on them at all or you lied on the check. They're different levels and they require a different response.
So we're at about an hour and a half, and we haven't had a chance to hear from the public. So we'll go ahead to public comment. Wendy, do we have any written or public comment?
No previously received written public comment. Please send an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov if you'd like for us to include your public comment on this item. For those folks who are in the room, we welcome you to give public comment. We're talking about all of the issues that have been discussed in this last item, including all of the HR issues as well as the chief's presentation. And if you're online, you can use the little raise your hand function or dial *3 on your phone and we will call you. If you're on YouTube, there's no chance to give public comment on YouTube. That's just you watching us. If you want to give public comment, you need to sign on to the WebEx and the link is on our website. So can you see the clock? Does it look, can you see it in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will be asking you to follow the 2-minute guideline and you can begin. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ruby Lazarga, and I'm here with ARC today. I'm speaking on item 4, and I'm asking you to take a hard look at what's happening inside our youth facilities because of staff shortages. Kids are being locked in rooms alone for hours. That's not a staffing issue, that's a state-sanctioned trauma. That's what happens when a system loses sight of its purpose. You said it yourself, this department has the highest percentage of staff call-outs compared to any other. People are calling out for a reason. The conditions are unsustainable. The culture is broken. The support is missing. And let's be honest, when someone doesn't show up at any other job, there's a backup plan. There are floaters, there are substitutes, contingency staffing. But in our youth facilities, there's no plan, just a locked door and a kid left in isolation. And that's not acceptable. And it's not about needing more money. Since 2021, the state has provided LA County probation with $88 million. As of June 2024, only $9.7 million has been spent. That's not a lack of funding, that's a failure of will, of leadership, and of follow through. Staffing strategies can't just keep up with attrition. They must get ahead of it. That means building systems that are resilient, humane, and youth-centered. LA County made a promise through Youth Justice Reimagined. It said we're going to care for our youth, not cage them. That promise is being broken every day. A young person sits alone because an adult didn't show up for work. We are calling on you to protect these youth, not the institution. That means hiring faster and smarter with healing-centered, trauma-informed staff, fixing conditions that push people out with better pay, support, and dignity, creating emergency staffing plans so kids are never left alone, enforcing real accountability through transparency and oversight, and leading with care, not compliance. This isn't just about staffing, it's about who we are. We owe these young people more than excuses. We owe them safety, healing, and a future. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hello. A lot was said today. I'm so tired, so I'm just address first hiring issues. I don't think we can compare hiring for probation with other departments. When you go to the other departments and we hiring people with degrees. So these people are researching what's going on. They know what the department's about. They know what other departments are about. They know how much they're going to get paid in one place or another, and they got student loans to pay. You know, and they're also not, when you put in for probation, chances are you put in for other departments as well. So you're picking and choosing which one you want to go and which one offers the best opportunities. You go to the sheriffs, their starting pay is DPO's top pay. So which one would I go to? They have retirement. They have safety retirement. We don't. So you're going to be, Mr. Mayor, if I'm going to just use you, you go into juvenile hall. Are you able to take down 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds at your age? You know, not saying that you're old, but at your age, you know, compared to you go to the sheriffs and you'll be retired by then, full benefits. So that's what we're competing against when we're trying to recruit these people. You're not just putting in an application of probation. I had applications everywhere. Probation just called me first. And as far as the call outs, once again, we have to look at the whys. Everybody want to say, oh, it's bad character of the probation officers, it's bad this. We have to look at the whys. Once we start addressing the why they're calling out, then we'll start getting people back in because we can fix that issue. When we talk about safety and security, and then when we actually implicate the safety measures, we do our searches, we do all this, we get incriminated for that. I was here when this commission, three of you guys wasn't up here at the time, when they did the search and they found all these drugs, you guys, not you three, but said that, oh, let's investigate them for doing that search, even though they found all those drugs. So we got to really look at that.
Thank you.
I still love you, Thomas.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shalon Joseph, Special Counsel to Ricardo Garcia. I do agree with you, Chief, that facts matter. So I just want to make the record clear on one thing that you said here, which is it was a public defender that actually uncovered the gladiator fights by requesting the tapes in court that were released. And then that started the investigation. And yes, you did follow up and investigated to the fullest and prosecuted. But I do think that the record should be clear that it was the public defender that discovered those tapes and the fact that the gladiator fights were occurring.
Good morning, Helen Eigenberg, resident of SD3. Sorry, it's freezing in here. But there's a couple of things I just want to bring up. I've been sitting in the POC meetings for a while now, and it's the same conversations over and over. And when we keep talking about this never-ending staffing issue, it seems it is our moral obligation then, if we cannot resolve immediately the staffing issue, which I understand the complexities of it, it is our moral obligation to make sure that every single youth that is placed at LP has to be there. The whole point of the youth system is to put a youth in the least restrictive place that they can be in. And if we are not 110% sure that that youth needs to be in LP, they shouldn't be there. And I don't have faith that that has happened. We should have reassessed every youth when we knew that this was going to happen. And I don't believe that it really happened. And I know that you've said that only 2 are eligible to be released. I just find it really hard to believe that. And it is our moral obligation. They shouldn't be there if they don't have to be, because it is utter chaos in LP and we all know it. And the trauma that is happening to everyone, staff and the youth, is just unacceptable. And the other thing too, that I'm sitting here listening, and I hope state officials are listening out there, SB 357. All we want to do is move some responsibility, relieve the pressure on probation, not peace officers, but remove and hand it over to DYD. And the fact that now that has been clogged and is not going to happen when it would help us in this crisis situation blows my mind, right? Let DYD take some of the pressure off, not peace officers. We're not talking about making DYD peace officers, but taking things that you just described that peace officers don't have to do, giving it to the DYD. So something's got to change. This is insanity. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabrina Creighton, and I'm here with the Anti-Recidivism Policy Team. I'm here to address the need for depopulation and staffing. In 2020, the Youth Justice Reimagined Directive was created, and a huge part of that initiative was figuring out ways to depopulate our juvenile halls and use alternative means of incarceration for our youth. ARC is asking for other alternatives outside of policing our youth. We are asking for community-based staff, staff that our youth would benefit from, trauma-focused healing classes, classes that prioritize self-care through physical activities, or courses that offer a holistic approach. We ask that you consider this as more than a goal, but implemented as necessary policy. We also put an emphasis on trauma-informed, community-based staff, hiring staff in a quicker and more effective way that would be of the most effective change for our youth. And also creating a work environment that staff is invested in for the sake of our youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Good afternoon, Isabella with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. And as someone who is actively working to bring community support to probation, it's incredibly discouraging to continue showing up to these meetings and still see no real progress, no transparency, and no motivated action from the department. Over the past year, not only have things failed to improve, they've gotten worse. This failure has impacted everyone, the youth inside, the probation staff trying to do their jobs under increasingly difficult conditions, and the broader community that continues to show up and offer support. Month after month, we hear the same responses. We'll get back to you, or we're working on it. But from our side, little has changed. If staffing is a real barrier, then maybe start by addressing the ones who aren't showing up. It's hard to justify the lack of resources when there's no accountability for the resources that are already in place. It's time to take action. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Antonia Aguilar, and I'm here with the ARC policy team, and I'm prepared to comment on item 4. Attorney General Bonta's decision to call for the court's intervention via receivership did not come out of nowhere. After years of mismanagement, abuse, and neglect, Bonta is throwing a Hail Mary. And today, Guillermo has expressed an incapability to provide appropriate services. Our youth deserve better. If you are not out of ideas, then ensure that the current ideas and goals and future ones are met, such as depopulation, mental health care, and increased staffing. Make sure these are met and that their outcomes are shared with this commission in comprehensive and accountable reports. Urge your staff to also take accountability for their actions. 16-hour shifts does not excuse violence and abuse, room confinement, or excessive use of force. We urge you instead to hire trauma-informed, PREA-compliant staff that understand the circumstances of our youth and that can act in emergencies to protect the youth rather than to punish them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're going to go to our online commenters now, and we'll start with James Maddox. Welcome, James. We'll unmute you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. You can begin.
Terrific, terrific. I have been coming to the meetings for a while. And so this is going to sound to some of you who've been around for a while like old hat. The county budget is $47.9 billion. The probation department is close over $1 billion. The county has $4 billion of unrealized liabilities arising out of behaviors that go back 40 years. My proposal that I have offered on many occasions is to shut down probation. We then take $300 million and then enter into some sort of arrangement with either Orange or Ventura County. Then we could take that $700 million that was left over and allocate it to the unrealized liabilities that are hanging out there. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is a call-in user. Your call-in user number 14, and I cannot see your number. So hopefully you know who you are. We're going to unmute you.
Yes, hi. Henry Turner Asher, District 2. And a couple of things. One, I think that when doing these presentations, it would probably be more advantageous to have separate topics so that so we can kind of limit the fluidity of a comprehensive overhaul. That way you can have more participation. Secondly, I think it might be a good idea if the probation department has the chief to do kind of like a PSA to speak positively about the department and its employees. That way you might have more people that would want to be a part of it, because all we kind of hear is the negativity, and I think that would also increase the likelihood of your employment situation, since that seems to be a constant discussion at these meetings. I notice your graduating corps, or I'm not sure what you call it, academy, but it doesn't seem to be cultural diversity in who's being hired, and I wonder what steps the department is taking to secure more African American representation in the department as far as your new employees. And then the last thing, somebody said earlier, but the conversation, I hear a lot of the employees talk about the accountability, and so I think if we have more discussion on why the employees are not there rather than harping the same strings of they're not there, then you can probably find better solutions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And our final commenter today will be Lupe Ross. Good morning, Ms. Ross.
Me?
Yes, we can. You can begin.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. And I'm glad to see Guillermo is there at the meeting because he does have a habit of, when it comes to public forum, he leaves. Not only with this commission, but with the Board of Supervisors meeting also. Now, we've talked a lot about, I've listened to a lot of facts. There were 69 fights that were reported, okay? So of these 69 fights, these are facts. How many did the administration or Guillermo know when they were happening or within a short time frame afterwards? Now, we can't just get 69 fights at the end of the year that they're being reported on. And the video also is supposed to be a fact. The video where they beat up that little boy, the Mexican boy, that we have this big lawsuit down that we have to pay out as taxpayers. That wasn't the only one. And it took like 3 months for Guillermo to put it out to the public. Like it was the first time he heard about it. Okay. That's okay. You can tap him all you want, but I'm going to keep on talking. Still, drugs get into the LP because in that screening process, the visitors and the parents are treated differently. Parents have to take off shoes, socks, and barefoot and walk through there. Staff doesn't. Staff can come in with carts, and we don't know what's in those carts, and just go through. Nobody says anything to them. So drugs can come through there, but parents are always the ones that want to get blamed for bringing the drugs in. But the last few times that it's been made public, it has not been parents. And we can't even give a hug to a child, our own child, because we're passing them drugs through our mouth to their mouth, okay? You're not kissing them in their mouth, you're kissing them in the cheek.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chief, we're going to let you make any final comments that you would like, and then we're going to take a break and move on to the next subject. And I don't think you're here anymore after that. That's okay. Thank you. We spoke enough on this side.
Yeah, no, nothing further. I always appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully we are communicating more ahead of time in writing so that you have sufficient information to digest and to, sort of inform where you want to go with these meetings. I hope you have found improvement in the documentation product.
We had 2 of your stars today, so that was.
I just want to make one comment just in response to one of the commenters who asked for information. So in response to the commenter who had a question about essentially the diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives with respect to your HR. So like when you present, I think that might be some good data to sort of share, what that breakdown looks like with respect to sort of the recruitment effort and who's graduating. I think I'm interested by that question as well.
Okay, we'll provide documentation. It's an area we're proud of. We have an extraordinarily diverse workforce, so happy to provide that.
Thank you. It's now 11:25. We will take a break.
Can I make a plea before we take this break? The issue that is coming up after the break about complaints and grievances is one that is extremely important to me, and we have two really wonderful presenters. Please stay online. Please stay in the room if you can. So I'd really like for folks to be able to participate in this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
11:35? Oh. So we're going to item 5, right?
Yes.
There we go. Hearts? Is that correct?
Elisa.
Garcia?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got the last name. Yep. Oops. Get them right.
I suck and shoot. There it is. Who else are we?
Okay, thank you for holding tight. We are going to return to item number 5. For item 5, we will discuss and take possible action on presentations explaining how complaints and grievances are handled on the state and county levels. This presentation will include an overview of the Los Angeles County Probation Department's complaint and grievance policies, directives, and practices for youth in detention facilities and youth and adults on probation. We start with California's Office of Youth and Community Restoration, or OYCR. We are happy to have Alyssa Hartz and Miguel Garcia here. Thank you for making the trip to Los Angeles. Then we will hear from Probation's ombudsman's person, Tanika Sheehy. To begin, Wendy, we will give some background into the PLC's interest and experience with grievances and complaints.
Thank you very much, Chair Mundo. And actually, I think we've decided we're going to switch the order and ask Ms. Sheehy to go first and then OYCR. But first, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the history of the Probation Oversight Commission's role in grievances. So originally, it was actually already mentioned once today, the PREA, the Probation Reform Implementation Team, came up with a structure for the Probation Oversight Commission, which included an arm of grievances. And the idea at that time was that while there was an internal structure for grievances and complaints that you'll hear about in a minute, there was not an external structure for grievances and complaints. And so there was an idea that the POC would serve in that role. However, since the creation of the POC, the state as part of the overall restructuring of the Department of Juvenile Justice, created the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, OYCR, that has an external ability for people to make complaints with investigative authority, which really changed the need, in my opinion, to have that at the local level. And also, as we were looking at the scarcity in terms of the ability to have resources for the Oversight Commission, it made sense for us to collaborate and work with and refer folks to the internal probation complaint and grievance process, as well as the external processes through both the Office of Inspector General and the state office. So I'm very pleased to be able to talk about that more in this presentation. However, the Probation Oversight Commission and the commissioners themselves have taken extraordinary interest in both the actual grievances and complaints that come into the department, as well as the processes and policies. We published a report, gosh, was it 3.5 years ago or so, on recommendations about the grievance and complaint policies. The commissioners review diligently grievances when they do inspections in the facilities. And I just wanted to share a couple of things that I myself have learned about this process. One of which I will never forget, which happened early on. I was standing in one of the rooms at Dorothy Kirby Center with Director Varela, who a couple of years ago celebrated 50 years as a probation employee, which is pretty extraordinary in itself. And he told me a couple of things that really helped solidify my understanding of why it's so important to understand and support and continue to improve the grievance and complaint procedure. One of them was that he said something which resonated with me. I have 6 children, including all of whom, except for one who's 12, who thinks he's a teenager, have been teenagers. And he said something like, "I'm really glad I didn't have a complaint box in my living room." I can appreciate that very much, because teenagers, and now I'm talking about my own, have a tendency to complain about things, like, for example, what I'm making for dinner all the time. And those complaints can be annoying, and sometimes they're really important and give me an insight into what they're thinking. And what he said was that when he early on started in the facilities, he was thinking we need to reduce the number of grievances. That's the overall goal. And that then he realized that actually the more grievances, the better. And that what he really liked about working at Dorothy Kirby Center, which you're going to hear later from Elisa because I already had a chance to hear this report, at Dorothy Kirby Center, there were girls. And that the girls happened to be more inclined to write their grievances down. And that he learned from that process that if he could encourage that regular communication around having as many grievances as possible, he would get the silly, petty, unnecessary grievances and get the grievances that were about daily operations that needed to be better, and also get the very serious grievances. That was a really important learning experience for me about understanding why it's so important to have this regular communication. The other thing that I learned during that process, which has a lot to do with things that Ms. Sheehy has explained to me, is that oftentimes things that come in as a grievance are things that can be dealt with very quickly and easily, like it's cold, I need a blanket. And that really the best way to deal with that, if you have a home-like environment, is to be able to tell an adult, it's cold, I need a blanket, and the adult gives you a blanket. That sounds so reasonable and normal, but I will say that actually is probation's policy about dealing with grievances at the lowest level. So, so why is this an important discussion, and why am I so pleased that we're having this discussion on the same day that we're talking about PREA? Is that if young people don't believe that the grievance process works, they won't grieve, they won't complain about the very serious issues that need to be addressed. And I will say that in meeting with young people over the years of doing inspections, it is often that we hear, did you fill out a grievance? No. Why would I do that? It doesn't go anywhere. Nothing happens. Now, I can tell you when we review the grievances, we can see that things do happen. They are actually addressed many times to the satisfaction of the young person. And often, if there isn't an ability to do a resolution to the satisfaction of the young person, there's at least a written response to that grievance. But I think that it's extraordinarily important to have folks internally and externally who can provide the grievances. The Probation Oversight Commission, the commissioners and staff still have a lot of work that we're interested in doing in terms of constant and continuous improvement about the grievance system. I will tell you, I'm particularly concerned about the lack of the ability of young people to have an option to write grievances now on computers or kiosks or some kind of anonymous ability to do grievances, which has been discussed by the department for many years and still not implemented. There's been some technological issues and barriers to that. So there still is a lot of room for improvement. But I will say it has been my great pleasure to work with Ms. Sheehy and now with OICR and their team in terms of understanding about having people who really believe in the dignity of young people who are overseeing this internally and externally. So with that, I will be quiet and pass it to Ms. Sheehy, who can talk to you about probation's process. Are you going to show the flow chart? We actually, so included as an attachment, there is a flow chart. I don't think we can put it up on the screen. I'm looking, I don't think we can do that. It's attached to the agenda. I also have a copy of it, if that helps.
Okay, hello, my name is Tanika Sheehy Gomez. I am the ombudsman for the probation department. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands within probation, there's the grievance process, which we consider a grievance to be something that a youth can file within the facility. That grievance process is run by the superintendent or by either Detention Services Bureau or Residential Services Bureau. So the grievance process is separate from the ombudsman process. So in order to keep things clear, is that the ombudsman considers the process to be a complaint process. So within probation, the youth can, in the facility, can file a grievance, go through that process. They can, at the lowest level, there are grievance officers in each of the facilities. They can meet with the youth, they can fill out the grievance, they can appeal their grievance. There's a whole process. That's separate from the Office of the Ombudsman. So my office is the outside source. It's the telephone number, the 800 number on the wall. So we've done great efforts during the last 2 years to make sure that the youth are, they have signage, they are at intake. During orientation, they are made familiar with the Office of the Ombudsman. We are the resource that they can call outside of filling out a grievance. So if they call our number, we will definitely answer. I have my wonderful intake specialist here. He is bilingual, and I want to thank him, for answering the phone all the time. And so if they call us, we will take all the information that we can, and we will go to those locations. So if a youth calls us, we will always send someone to speak to them in person. So therefore, they don't have to go into detail over the telephone what the issue is. They can just say, I want to speak to the ombudsman. In that sense, they can also, on the grievance form, not put what the issue is and just say, I want to talk to the ombudsman. So it's two separate processes. So we get a lot of calls from parents. We attend the LACO town halls, so our parents know about us. We are there on the weekends. So our parents, during visitation, have our information. I don't know if you guys saw the stress balls over there, the little telephones, but we pass that out. We go to resource fairs. So we're on the public facing page. So at the bottom of the public facing probation page, there's a way you can file a complaint or file a compliment. We do take compliments as well, or recognitions. So it's multiple ways that you can get a hold of us. So you can call us on telephone, you can go in person to headquarters, or you can email us directly. You don't have to have a form. You can just send us an email with the concern at ombudsman.lacounty.probation.lacounty.gov. So the Ombudsman Office, a little more about us. We don't just deal with concerns from our youth. We deal with concerns from everyone, from adult clients as well. Adult probation, AB 109, the community, our victims. We take calls from and to try to assist anyone that calls us. So in 2024, we had about 1,100 concerns. I'd say about 33 of that was from our juvenile facilities. So we're active, we're busy. This past year, we've actually placed ombudsman on site. So our goal is to have an ombudsman on site at each of the facilities. Right now, we're at Los Padrinos, and I think it's working well. Our parents call us. Sometimes they just want someone to go and look at their loved one. So we are able to do wellness checks. We're able to do clarifying interviews. The Ombudsman Office is informal, independent in the sense that we do not report to the facilities. We report to the chief. So we're under the Internal Affairs Bureau, and therefore, if I see any policy violations, anything that's a hint of something that's gone wrong, we do have direct access and the responsibility to refer it to Internal Affairs, we go to our short-term residential treatment program. So we're in the STRTPs. We do unannounced visits with them to check on our youth. We can refer items to the Quality Assurance Bureau within a child welfare unit. So we are kind of like the extra resource for the, friends and family and our clients. Probation is huge. Los Angeles County is huge. So I always think it's a benefit to have someone on the inside that knows who and, who to talk to, who to call, and who can handle, our matters. And we push for resolve. We push for, we want to be able to assist anyone that calls us, especially our youth. So, is that a little bit? A little bit? Did I? Okay. And of course, if you have any questions, and of course, feel free to call us.
You take that and just got to talk right into it. Oh, great. Okay, so as you're getting ready, Elisa, that so the flow chart that was just up on the screen, that is in the packet, and it has the number and email address that Ms. Sheehy just spoke of, as well as the OICR and the OIG contact information. So you can link to that on the agenda.
Thank you so much. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, which hopefully will be displayed. My name is Elisa Hartz. I'm the ombudsperson for the Office of Youth and Community Restoration. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us. I have Ms. Sheehy on speed dial, so we work closely together, as you'll hear. And I'm joined here by my colleague Miguel Garcia, who's an ombuds liaison for the office. We are a team of 6 people in the ombuds division of the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, and so you're seeing a third of us right here. And my goal today is just to introduce to you the Ombuds Division and what we do, what our complaint process is, so we can kind of explain how it intersects and overlaps and collaborates with the internal Ombuds process. And then briefly, I'll present a little bit of the data that we have submitted to the legislature in our recent report on our work in 2024. I did want to mention that we're often referred to as OICR. We are here as the Ombuds Division of OICR. So the OICR itself, the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, has a much broader work than just the Ombuds Division. And I would encourage you to take a look at our website, oicr.ca.gov. The 2024 annual report for OICR was just published, hot off the press, so you can see a range of the work that we do. But there's some really, really powerful initiatives and work that are being done around ending girls' incarceration, less restrictive programs, CalAIM, a whole slew of initiatives and experts and technical assistance that OICR as a whole offers. This presentation will really be focused on the Ombuds Division, which has a very specific statutory mandate. So if we could, there's a lot of slides in this presentation. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they will be made available as a PDF that you can review. And again, I encourage you to consult the website. In addition to the OICR annual report, you'll find the Ombuds legislative report, which includes all of this information and much more. So if we could go ahead, please, to we can skip that slide. And the next slide, please. So the OICR Ombuds Division is a traditional ombudsperson, which means that we do informal resolutions of complaints. So we receive complaints, and when we get a complaint, we ask the complainant what is their desired outcome, and then we decide whether to investigate the complaint and and we can try to get to their desired outcome. We are not a we are a state body, but we are not a regulatory body. We are not the BSCC. We do not do inspections, and we have the authority to make recommendations to the department, and we have the authority to publish reports to the legislature, but we are not a regulatory body, just to kind of clarify that from the outset. We also do not, we cannot take any steps related to personnel matters. That's completely outside of our jurisdiction. And we do not participate in any criminal investigations or judicial proceedings. So we were created, as stated before, by SB 823, which closed the state youth prisons as an impartial body that can investigate complaints relating to any of California's youth facilities. This is a new thing in the state. So, and this just happened in 2021. So before then, there was an ombudsperson for the Division of Juvenile Justice, or the California Youth Authority, but that ombudsman only had authority to investigate DJJ complaints, not for local facilities. So this is really a new function. And we do have jurisdiction to investigate complaints from everywhere in the state. And you'll see in our 2024 report that we are getting complaints from all over the place. The complaints can relate to violations of rights, violations of law, and harmful practices in the facilities. So it's a fairly broad jurisdiction. Our foundational document is the Youth Bill of Rights, which has previously been mentioned. We publish materials that include the Youth Bill of Rights in a youth-friendly format. So there's posters in every facility, as well as these brochures that are currently in Spanish and English and that are provided to every youth upon orientation, as well as to families, and provided in visiting areas. Next slide, please. So as I said, our main function is to receive and investigate complaints, and where possible to resolve them. But we also, we have a critical reporting function, so we provide reports to the legislature. There, we do annual reports, and we also have the authority to do special reports. A third function is to educate young people, families, community-based organizations, and others about the Youth Bill of Rights. And finally, as of January 1, 2024, we were also given the mandate to visit each of the state's juvenile facilities at least once a year. So there are 42 counties that have youth facilities, and there are, I think, 63 distinct addresses. So our team is required to visit each facility at least once. Next slide, please. The key characteristics of the ombudsperson are that we are impartial. So we do impartial investigations, meaning we receive the complaint, take it very seriously, and we ask for we hear the other side of the story. We get records, documentation, video, and we make findings about the validity of the complaint. The complaints are confidential. We never reveal the identity of the complainant. We sometimes need to use the name of the youth who's implicated in the complaint if it's a youth-specific complaint. So, for instance, if there's a complaint that the food is always being served cold, we would not need to use the name of the youth to investigate that complaint, because it's an issue that impacts the whole unit. But if it's a complaint that a particular youth is not getting access to college, then we would need to use the youth's name in order to try to resolve the complaint. We are independent. We are, I think, especially independent in the sense that we are a state body, and we are investigating complaints from local facilities that we have no authority over. We can't make them do anything as the Ombuds Division, so we are really making our own independent findings. And then we have a value of credibility, so we are really value the light of day test, and we would want all of our investigations to really be impartial, and anybody looking at what we had done in an investigation would find our work to be credible. so I'll skip the next few slides, which kind of go through the different values of the ombudsperson. Happy to talk that more in the future, and go to the complaint process overview slide. I think. So the complaint process, this is just a quick summary of the complaint process. So we do intakes of really robust investigative intakes. We always ask what the complainant's desired outcome is, and that becomes the kind of touchstone of what we're trying to achieve with the complaint. We provide any information that's necessary to the complainant about the process or about their rights. And then we have the critical step of either choosing to investigate the complaint or referring the complaint to another body for investigation. After we've done our investigation and made our findings, then we can attempt to resolve the complaint. So if a complaint is substantiated, we will try to get to the resolution that is desired. And we make our written recommendation to the department if we do have recommendations in response to the complaint. And then we close the complaint. So the next slide, please, shows some of the tools that we have for our investigations. We do have access, as of January 1st, 2024, AB 505 gave us more robust investigative authorities. Although the office has only been around since July of 2021, the Ombuds Division was established in July of 2021. We've actually had a pretty big development in our investigative authorities. Initially, we did not have any written official access to records, and so some counties were giving us records and some counties were not. But with AB 505, it really clarified that we do have access to records. We can get access to youth files without a court order. We have access to facility records, videos, and all of that is now specified in the statute, and that has really improved our ability to do complaint investigations. Next slide, please. We also have the authority to access youth and facilities at any time without prior notice. That's a new authority that we have also as of January 1, 2024. Previously, we had to give notice to the facility that they 48 hours notice that we would be coming and wanting to speak with the youth. Now we can just show up, call Ms. Sheehy, say, we need to speak with a certain youth, and we are able to do so. And we have the explicit authority to take records of our meetings with youth and if we need to take photographs of a bruise or a recording of an interview, we're able to do that. Next slide, please. And then finally, as I mentioned, we are now required also with AB 505 to conduct site visits of each facility in the state at least once a year. In addition to those are the annual site visits, but as I mentioned, we also can do investigative site visits. And so typically we do not announce our investigative site visits, but we do schedule in advance our annual site visits. Next slide, please. Yes, next one. We could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So anybody can make a complaint to the OICR ombudsperson, just as with the what Ms. Sheehy was describing. So youth can make complaints, families, staff, community-based organizations, credible messengers. We can and do get complaints from all of those parties. The complaints can be about any harmful condition or practice, any rights violation, or any emergence situation. And then this slide also contains the different ways that complaints can be made to us. The majority of our complaints, as you'll see, come through the phone line, the 800 number, which is staffed by live humans, notably Miguel, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. And then we also take complaints by email. Next slide, please. So the Youth Bill of Rights is really a foundational document for us. This is also a relatively new statute. Previously, there was not a youth bill of rights that was that applied to youth in local juvenile facilities. And what this document does, the statute does, is summarize all the existing rights of youth. So that it doesn't create new rights, it's summarizing all of the rights that youth already have. And it really is, it's a much more powerful document than I was anticipating. The first time that we had our publications prepared and I sat down with a youth and showed it to them, it was really kind of extraordinary. They, open up the brochure and start reading it, and they ask for a pen and want to start circling things and highlighting things. And I think it's really impactful for young people to see that they have the just because they're incarcerated does not mean that they do not have rights. It's empowering to them. It really kind of elevates their dignity, and I think gives them the ability to advocate for themselves, and also to articulate to us what the concerns are that they are having with their treatment in the facility. So we have both these brochures and then the posters, the very, very large scale posters, which are required to be posted in all juvenile facilities. Next slide, please. Oh, so that's the poster. And then the next slide shows the kind of content of the brochure. Now I'm going to really quickly go through some of the highlights of our 2024 report to the legislature. As I mentioned, this report is available online, and I would encourage you to take a look at it. The highlights, so the, let's see. Let's go to the next slide, please. So just, I want to save plenty of time for discussion. So this slide shows the kind of basic data from our 2024 work. So we received 296 complaints. We closed 154 complaints. We conducted 84 site visits. We provided the 5,711 Youth Bill of Rights posters. So that was the initial mailing of the Youth Bill of Rights posters, and nearly 40,000 of these brochures. But the number I really want to draw your attention to is the number of helpline calls, which was 2,490. To be clear, that is not the number of complaints. The number of complaints is 296, but that includes all incoming and outbound calls to the helpline. So our team of, for 2024, we for most of the year, we had 3 full-time liaisons. We now have 4 as of December 2024. So that team is handling all of those calls, and it also shows the number of calls that are required to address each of those complaints. It's a very, very extensive process. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of some of the data from the 2024 report. Youth complaints are, we divide our complaints into youth complaints and general complaints. Youth complaints are from youth. General complaints are complaints from anyone besides youth. And throughout the report, the youth complaints are colored orange and the general complaints are colored blue. Next slide, please. The most of our complaints come through the phone line, and then and in particular the youth complaints come through the phone line, which makes sense because youth tend to not have access to email. Next slide, please. This slide shows who are submitting the general complaints. So the non-youth complaints are predominantly submitted by parents. We also get a lot of complaints from attorneys, educators, healthcare providers, and community-based organizations who are in some way engaging with the youth. Next slide, please. So our report also details our findings in relation to the complaints. We have the discretion to decide whether to investigate a complaint. And then if we do investigate a complaint, we make a finding. So this shows the number of substantiated, unsubstantiated, and unsubstantiated complaints. And I don't think I'm going to go into the definitions here because I want to save time for the discussion of how we engage with the county probation officer, but I'm happy to answer any questions about how we make our findings and what we have found. The next slide shows the complaints received by county in 2024. If you go to the full report, you'll be able to see all of the complaints received from each county. What we did with this slide is we ranked the counties by the number of complaints received, the total number of complaints received. This is not the number of complaints that were substantiated, just the number of complaints received, and it's counted per by youth. So if one person makes a complaint about that relates to 5 different youth, then we will count that as 5 different complaints. Although there are some complaints that relate to systemic issues that will just be counted as one complaint. So you can see that the highest number of complaints came from San Diego, with LA being next highest number of complaints. So in 2024, we had 59 complaints, I believe, out of 296, which is 296 total. So that's 20% of the complaints that we received related to LA, which I think is actually about that's consistent with the number of youth in the proportion of youth in LA as compared to the rest of the state. I know the chief said that there were 25% of the youth are in LA. By my count, the BSCC shows that the LA's average daily population is about 20% of the state's average daily population. I'll let you know, in 2025 to date, I believe we have received 35 complaints from LA out of 226 total, which is 15%. So it's a little bit lower percentage so far. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the closure findings for each county, again broken down by the highest number of closed cases in each county. And again, this table is fully laid out in the annual report. But you'll see again that LA has the second highest number of cases that we closed in the state. Next slide, please. After we make our findings, we may refer the complaint for follow-up. So if we have substantiated a Title 15 violation, then we refer that finding to the BSCC to follow up on, because they are really the body that has the authority to ensure that there is compliance with Title 15. So we have a process where we send out our complaints to BSCC for further action if necessary. We also have the ability to refer a complaint for technical assistance to OICR, so to our colleagues at OICR. And this is an area that we really want to beef up because we have some really, really great experts and resources and best practices that we can offer to counties as part of a complaint resolution process. So, for instance, if we find that a facility is using force, is not properly de-escalating before they decide to use force in a certain context, we can refer that to our experts who can work with the county to develop, to identify training or to modify their procedures or really figure out how to kind of get to the place that we are, that will be really positive for youth development. Next slide, please. And then this slide shows the site visits, which I mentioned, both the annual and investigative site visits. So the annual site visits are the mandated AB 505 site visits, and then we also do our investigative site visits. And so just to show you how we're ramping up this, if you could Did I skip the issues? Okay. If you could go to the site visit slide and then I'll go back to the last year we did 22 investigative site visits in the whole year. And to date this year, we've already done 27. So we're really ramping up those investigative site visits. And then if you could go back one slide since I skipped that. So the complaint, we track complaint issues. These are the high level issues and these are the issues as alleged in the complaint. So these are not necessarily substantiated issues, but you can see that abuse and excessive force that's the largest number of complaints that we get. And that's been fairly consistent. So things like use of pepper spray, hands-on injuries, lack of decontamination, all of those things would be considered abuse and excessive force. I think I'll stop there. The report also includes, and the slides too, which you can review at your discretion, includes impact narratives. So it describes some of the resolutions, the investigations and resolutions that we've been able to achieve. And I think it shows like the range of issues that we're getting, the different types of resolutions that we can come to, and the great work that the team is doing. In terms of how we work with LA County Probation Ombudsman, Ms. Sheehy and her team, it's a very, we have an 800 number, they have an 800 number. No one really knows who they're calling, to be honest. There's like a lot of posters in the units. There's a lot of brochures. They don't, like, most people who have an issue don't really care who, like, they don't, if I say I'm the state ombudsman, like, they don't really know what that means or in comparison to Ms. Sheehy. And so we work, I think we collaborate well together. If we receive a complaint that is, so we take the same approach as Ms. Sheehy described of trying to resolve things at the lowest possible level. So if there's a complaint that should be resolved, that could be resolved potentially through a grievance, we always ask the young person if they have filed a grievance already, and if so, what was the outcome. We don't require that they file a grievance before we'll investigate their complaint, but we do recommend it because it can be a quicker way to resolve their issue. And specifically in LA County, if we get an issue that we think Ms. Sheehy's team could resolve right away, or if there's an emergency issue where we really do need eyes on the youth, then we will contact Ms. Sheehy's team and kind of cross-refer the complaint to them so that we can do, so it's possible that their team can resolve the complaint right away, and then it's over and we track the resolution. Sometimes there are investigations that we feel we need to conduct, and we won't necessarily refer it. If there's video evidence and records that we want to review, then we'll move forward with that. But if we get complaints where there's an immediate youth safety issue, we always contact Ms. Sheehy to make sure that we can get eyes on the young person right away. And that's a really huge advantage that we have in LA. Not many counties have their own ombudsman with that kind of robust function. And it's a really great resource, I think, for the youth and the families and for us as the state ombudsman. So thank you. I didn't mean to go on so long, but looking forward to all the questions and discussion.
There's any questions, comments, concerns? I have a question. Well, go ahead.
Okay, I'll ask if you could just elaborate, both of you. So I mentioned that what we've heard in our inspections is that some of the reasons that young people say that they don't file a grievance or call in a complaint is because they're concerned about retaliation, because they're concerned that there's it's not going to lead to any resolution, and also what's described as a no snitch culture. How would you recommend that your office is trying to encourage young people to express their concerns despite those real and perceived problems? And also, what can we as advocates, as credible messengers, as people who are running, are in the facilities, as who know youth, who are connected with families, do to encourage those complaints to come in?
Do you want to start? So those are all concerns that we have heard as well. And we take them very seriously. So we always let people know that retaliation is the basis for another complaint. And we always do ask people to keep us informed if they believe that they're being retaliated against. But I think the issue is that if it's stopping them from even making a complaint, then we don't even have the opportunity to try to help. I think one way that we're really working to change the culture is to make sure that we're really communicating with youth about what we're doing for them, even if we're not able to resolve their complaint. Engage with them constantly to let them know the progress of our work and that we are hearing them and that we are trying to get to their desired outcome. So trying to give them confidence that even if we may not get the result they want, their voice is being heard and taken seriously. And also that reminding them that when they make a complaint, it can change things not only for themselves, but for other young people. I think the culture of filing complaints is something also that we're trying to work on both with young people and with staff. So acknowledging that it may be perceived as snitching, but reiterating the implications of advocating for yourself and advocating for other people, and just having that dialogue with young people to try to move them in that direction. And then with departments, I really agree with what you said, Wendy, about the value of increasing the number of complaints. And if you look at our complaints from counties across the state, they are not necessarily consistent with they don't track the size of counties. And I don't think that just because there are more complaints in some counties that should necessarily, like complaints received, that shouldn't necessarily mean that department is doing worse than another department. And in some ways, I'm more concerned about counties where we have 0 complaints, because that seems like everybody has something to complain about. And like I met with a youth recently in a facility who said, well, I have complaints, but nothing that's really important. And then he went on to talk about like not getting to visit with his sister for 2 years, and not not having access to education because of a disciplinary issue, and that kind of thing. So I think educating young people about their rights is really important, and then creating a culture both for young people and departments where advocating or asking about your rights and having your rights be upheld is a positive for everybody involved. Continuous improvement for the department and improvement of the conditions of life for incarcerated young people.
Ditto. No, I just wanted to and just add that's a hard culture to fight, because that's something that we've all grown up with, that snitches get stitches, and that's just it's hard to fight, but yet I have seen that when we have more people aware, especially our CBOs, the folks that are actually working with the youth in programming, if they know about us, the Ombudsman Office, sometimes the youth just talking and advocating for themselves, they're able to call on their behalf. And that's positive. Up at Barry J, SYTF, they have a youth council. So we've been going to those youth council meetings. Our on-site ombudsman at LP, Los Padrinos, she's, now the kids, just ask for her. It's not any stigma associated with talking to the ombudsman. But we're just trying to appear more to definitely have youth advocate for themselves. There was I don't know who attended, but at LP they had a poster competition with the grievances. Like it was beautiful, these posters that the youth made. And I keep advocating to put the 800 number in a mural in each of the units, and then you don't have to worry about posters, just put the numbers out. Oftentimes, when there is a concern, a complaint, even in regards to retaliation, they'll call everybody. Like I'll get the call, Board of Supervisors, POC gets the call. It goes everywhere, and that's fine. And I tell the youth all the time when they call to give as much detail as you can, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with advocating for yourself. Yeah.
Sorry.
Commissioner Harris. Oh, sorry.
May I add something? I think what benefits our office at OYCR is our annual visits. Just recently and just for the past year is building up the rapport with the youth, identifying ourselves, putting a face to a poster. There's dozens of posters that a lot of youth have. One of the things is also is establishing the type of rapport that we're impartial, meaning we don't work for the county. We're our own entity. We work for the state. I think that eases the youth's mind that retaliation won't come from our end, or retaliation is taken seriously on our end, and just assuring them that they do have rights. Some of the youth may feel that it's a norm based on the consequences they have, but the more that we educate them, the more it's my second year going on annual visits that I present to them that their rights, that if an adult were to do something wrong on the outside and someone had caught them, someone would report them. It's the same thing. And so just trying to inform them, motivate them to read it. You had on a recent site visit, there was a kid that shared that he had posted up the ombuds brochures, and there was kids walking around the track field, feeling secure knowing that they had their rights. And one young person had mentioned, described it as like, these are the constitutional rights of youth. And it's just amazing just to see how empowered some of the young people feel with this. But there is a balance where I feel that our office could support. So.
Commissioner Harris.
Could you guys both, all of you, please talk a little bit more specifically about the the outcomes, right? Like it was really helpful to read the narratives and the examples. I suspect that for someone who loses their property or has their fiance that's unable to visit, that it might feel unsatisfying if it's a policy change versus them getting their things back, or like seeing their fiance soon or something like that. But could you just sort of describe the different outcomes? I suspect maybe it's a little bit different because you're working in two different offices, and the types of referrals that you can make. I know Elisa, the OYCR team, is not actually makes those referrals out to either the department for, makes a recommendation for a policy shift or refers to another agency. I'm a little less clear on what happens in LA County, but I think it would be helpful to sort of hear, a little bit more concretely about what some of the outcomes are when someone makes a complaint and they're substantiated. Or I think there's even some, the samples of no findings or inconclusive complaints, like maybe something was going on, but it's sort of moot because they left, or I don't know. But just what happens at the end and how you close the loop.
Well, when it comes to employee conduct or use of force, like complaints in particular about that, a lot of people feel that the department isn't doing anything. Like they didn't do, nothing happened. But because of, probation officer Bill of Rights and civil service, there are things. So things happen. they feel that it didn't happen, it's only because we don't call the parent back and say, oh yeah, that staff was fired. Even though that could possibly be the outcome to their complaint. So because we can't go back and tell them exactly what happened, especially when dealing with staff, they feel that nothing's happened. But you know, we attempt to handle everything. If you I think we were, well, I guess I shouldn't tell the outcomes to, like when I read their report, I knew who they were talking about because I was like, oh yeah, those are our kids. But an example being a youth not having eyeglasses. Okay, they're in the camp with no eyeglasses, and you're like, how can a youth not have eyeglasses? Well, it turns out that that youth might have broken them or tried to use them as a weapon, or, you know, there's something, and the optometrist from medical just refuses to supply the fourth pair of eyeglasses. So I, you know, go to medical, you know, give us one more pair, work with that camp that he will sign in and out his glasses, you know, but so he needs the glasses in order to take the test through LACO. So it's just kind of mediating, I guess you could say, looking for lost items, for retainers, you know, things that are small but are big to other people. The parents are like, you know, I paid for retainers. That's, you know, income. Someone lost a backpack with all their school books in it. You know, we just need an extra hand to look. And then the bigger issues, we work with our facilities. We'll talk to our superintendents and say, hey, you need to, you know, look at this. Or we were able to pull video and refer to internal affairs. So it's just being able to be involved and to just to follow through on the items. Like we'll go back to a director or to restitution, for example, and say, hey, the victim is not receiving, you know, it's been 2 weeks. You know, we can follow up whereas the complainant doesn't have to. And we track everything. Look, we track everything. We give everybody 2 weeks to kind of work it out, and then we'll be back. They know that I will show up at a director meeting unannounced, and they're like, oh, here comes the ombudsman. And you just show up places, whereas other people on outside wouldn't be able to do that.
I think there are different types of complaints. Sometimes the complaints really are about the specific youth needing a specific thing and having a specific issue. And if that is not resolved, then I can definitely see why it's frustrating. I mean, maybe, and it might be very much substantiated, but you can't get to the resolution because they're released or because of, you know, various factors. So there's that type of complaint, and then sometimes those are systemic issues and sometimes they're not. Like sometimes maybe you've lost your property and that seems like a small, or, you know, an individual issue, but it turns out to be a pattern. And so it really does require a policy change. And so that's not going to help the person who lost their property and didn't get it back. But there's, it will help things for the next youth. And then there are some types of complaints which really are kind of inherently systemic issues that where you can't really remediate what happened. It's really kind of looking forward and trying to get to that point. And I think what we hear from complainants is they, like, often when they're calling us, they want things to be made right for the next person. Like that really is they want to have the harm, the wrong that was done to them acknowledged and seen, and to have it, you know that it won't happen to someone else going forward. And so I think that people really do appreciate a resolution, even if it doesn't help them as an individual.
Thank you. If there are no other concerns, comments, questions, Wendy, do we have any live or written public comment?
I don't believe we have any written public comment on this issue. If you'd like to make public comment in the audience, we'd love to hear your comments. or online. You can raise your hand using the raise your hand function or dial *3 on your phone. No one has stood up online, and we don't have anybody. I said it backwards. We don't have any public comment. I'll leave it at that. Yes.
I just want to add real quick, and this is, I often hear that the ombudsman didn't call me back, or I didn't hear from anyone. And I just want to say that both of our teams will, if you haven't heard from someone, to call us back, or, you know, we really make a great effort to respond to anybody that has reached out to us. So if you hear that, if you all hear that, feel free to have them call back, give them a different number, or, you know, we want to make sure that they're heard.
Thank you. Looks like we do have public
Yes,
comment
thank you.
live.
Yes. Please. Give me a second. I don't think maybe you just need to turn it on.
How about now?
Great.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Antonia Aguilar, and I'm here on behalf of ARC, and I'm prepared to comment on item 5. And I also kind of want to comment on item 3, which I missed, but I think it's kind of collaborative. So I'm really encouraged by this grievance process that's being conducted. I think it's amazing to have that option for young people to bring up their grievances, but I do want to speak in light of the comments on PREA. So when you have 6,800 claims in one lawsuit and $4 billion needing to be settled out, that's a systemic problem, right? And that's something that has been happening since, I think they started accepting claims since the 1950s. So that demonstrates a huge inadequacy to protect youth and to have full accountability. So I'm hoping that despite the efforts that you're making, I mean, in light of the efforts that you're making, that you're also making efforts to follow up for real, not, okay, well, we'll deal with this one off. Are we changing the system? Are we changing the way people are treated? Are we changing the don't snitch culture, right? Are we working to help youth advocate for themselves, protect themselves, as well as protect them? So I think this really means ensuring mandatory reviewing. There are some that you did not review, and I'm kind of concerned as to why. Maybe it wasn't a lack of evidence, but in cases of sexual violence and sexual abuse, lack of evidence is often something that's claimed in courts, and then victims are not given justice. So what kind of follow-ups for lack of evidence or whatever, could you maybe expound upon that? And then we need zero tolerance, right? Jesus. But anyway, just, you know, the point of our justice system is rehabilitation, and it's not to further traumatize and
Thank you.
brutalize vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Welcome.
Okay, good afternoon to the commissioners. My name is Sabrina Creighton, and I am here with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition policy team. I kind of wanted to piggyback off my colleague Antonia because I do feel really encouraged and inspired off of, you know, what we just saw today in the grievance process and, you know, the presentation that was shared. ARC just wants to continue to encourage the county, you know, to not only uphold the grievances process, but ensure that that it's a process of true transparency and concern, you know, with the focus on our youth and their dignity and worth of a person. You know, also ensuring that we're following the complaints process accurately in order to build better relationships with not only the incarcerated youth, but also the communities that they come from. Something you had mentioned as well, you know, kind of like the discretionary piece to the review of complaints. Maybe just kind of reviewing that discretionary process to ensure the removal of a subjective questioning that's applied, that may be applied to these complaints, you know, when you're considering what to review and what not to. You know, we're also pushing ARC, you know, supporting measures that ensure the safety of the incarcerated youth after a complaint is made and identifying ways for these youth to, you know, avoid retaliation. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Can I address one of those comments?
Of course.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Ruby.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ruby Lazarga, and I'm also speaking today on behalf of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. When a young person is harmed in a facility and doesn't feel safe speaking up, or when a young person is harmed in a facility and doesn't feel safe speaking up, that harm doesn't go away. It lingers. And when they fear retaliation, they often stay silent. And when no one seems to listen, they may begin to believe that their voices don't matter. And right now we have an opportunity and responsibility to show them that they do matter. So we're urging the Commission to reimagine the grievance process with youth at the center to make it clear, trauma-informed, and transparent. Let's bring in credible messengers, people who understand firsthand what it feels like to be dismissed, and who can help ensure that every young person is truly seen, heard, and believed. Our youth deserve more than just a forum. They deserve dignity, protection, and a process they can trust, one that gives them real reason to believe in it and in us. Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Hi, Thomas.
Sorry, I just got a question for it. When you guys get these calls, and sometimes you notice it's from the same area, same place, kind of the same thing, and like we said, we work with kids. When kids get mad, they look for ways to get even. So a lot of times when they call into the Busby, it's more of, I'm trying to get even at this officer for doing something. How do you guys determine which ones are he's just trying to get even with his officer and which ones are actually actual complaints?
I think that actually lends into the question that the first speaker asked about how do we find no reason to continue the investigation. I think it was correct.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we do our investigation into the complaint. So first of all, we appreciating the importance of youth voice and making sure that youth understand that they're being heard. We do take seriously everything that they call about. So even if there's a youth who's making repeated complaints, we're not going to necessarily dismiss complaint number 3 because we found the first 2 to be unsubstantiated. So we do take seriously what young people are saying, even if it's repeated. That said, we do impartial investigations. So we interview witnesses, we get records, we look at video, and we do what anyone would do if they were trying to evaluate whether a complaint was frivolous or for purposes of that were not related to the that for purposes that are not things that we can help them with. So I think we both take seriously all the complaints we get and do an impartial and what I think is pretty rigorous work on understanding whether the complaint is substantiated.
I'll attempt to answer that. It's really important who you have on your ombudsman team, I feel, because I have 27 years of probation experience. And sometimes we talk to all of you call, you're mad, understand? We'll come back and we'll talk to you. We'll go and actually meet with that youth. And sometimes the youth will say, I was just mad. And my on-site ombudsman at LP, her she has a therapy background, and she's actually experienced where the youth and the staff actually apologize to each other, because sometimes it's just you want to be respected. Respect is important on both sides, the staff and the youth, and sometimes an apology will go a long way for the whole unit. We've had youth that call us every day. I had a youth every Friday at 6 p.m. I knew the phone call was coming from Barry J. And he wanted to give me the temperature check of the unit, of the facility. And I welcome that. Sometimes you just have to be able to talk to the youth and hear the frustration and where it's coming from. We have parents, I think I was telling someone she had 3 youth in our care that would call us every week that's just frustrated with the whole system, the whole justice system. So I think it's just important who you have, who's answering the phone, who he has, has experience or been in that situation possibly, and just able to talk it out. And sometimes it's good to do an investigation, informal, even if nothing, even if the staff, the youth wasn't accurate with the information. They need to see that we're going to follow up, and they might be less likely to, call us with frivolous things.
Mr. Garcia.
So one of the things is that sometimes the youth call us and say, I want to get this staff fired, or they'll ask that. And one of the things is informing them what we can and cannot do, and is personnel things, is what we cannot fire or work on firing a staff. And so that changes the tone with us having a conversation with them, as well as educating them or hearing out what other options have they taken while dealing with that certain circumstances. Sometimes it's a Friday going into a weekend, or it's maybe on a Wednesday or something like that, and they want to call back from us, and we're like, well, let's see how things go during this shift, and we'll give you a call back the next day, or a day from now, and we give them a call back, and we ask to speak with them, and they're like, oh, I don't want it. It's something that just they deal with momentarily, and they get over it. But I think there's an appreciation of us following up with them, walking them through the steps of what they can do and they cannot do, or what we can do and cannot do, and it just guides them. So
I agree.
I will just say quickly, and to address, I'm sorry, Antonia, that I only have your first name in my head. Two things, one concrete and one not concrete. One is that Nathan Martinez mentioned we will be holding a town hall with probation to discuss specifically PREA reporting practices. So exactly what you were talking about in your comments about how to ensure the young people feel comfortable reporting, in particular, the most serious incidents around sexual misconduct. So we welcome you to participate in that. And secondly, just echoing how important and true what you're saying is, I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of survivors of sexual misconduct in the facilities. And I will tell you, there's one thing that they have said to me that is why I continue on this path around talking about grievances and complaints, why my colleague Jennifer is so serious about her recommendation she writes, which is that many of them did tell someone what was happening in the facility, did tell an adult, and it didn't get to a grievance. It didn't get written down. It didn't get to a complainant. In fact, they were told not to proceed with it. And so it's very serious. And, some of those are from years ago, but not all of them. And so I think it's extremely crucial to make sure that we're building this reputation of somebody's, just like what Miguel is saying, like, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, building rapport with the young people, making sure they have the actual access to making the complaint. So I'm very pleased about this presentation, and there's still a long way to go to get to the goal of where we want to be.
And so I don't know what this means, but our sound people have a hard stop at 1, which means that we're probably going to bring this item to an end. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the great questions out there and the great comments. Colleagues, we have a hard decision here. If you can take a look at item number 6 and item number 7, and if you don't have objection, we can maybe reset it for the next meeting. Okay, so.
No objection. Our meeting's close, so I think it's in 3 weeks, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. There's an argument for closing these items. So do we need a vote, or is that enough?
I think we do a voice vote.
Okay, can I have a voice vote to move these items to the next meeting? Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you. We're going to move to item number 8, which is for matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or place a future meeting agenda for action. Commissioners, do you have any announcements or items you would like to place on future agenda. Commissioner Ship.
Yeah, hopefully we could talk about the visitation policies and practices at the next meeting. And specifically, hopefully we could talk to somebody in probation, but also on the outside and seeing how it is being put into practice, especially like with the report that we saw earlier. I would definitely like to talk about visitation more.
Perfect. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I second.
Thank you. Yes, noted, and will be on the agenda. And one thing I would like to just mention, I visited Camp Appleball and learned from all the agencies that are in there, probation, LACO, and Department of Health. The transition from closing down Page and moving youth over went really well, better than most expected. So I'm happy to report that. And the last thing I want to report is that we have seen an increased by intake recommending house arrest. So that's good. We were at big number in March was 45. So that was good. And so with that, I'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 9, which is an invitation for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Wendy, please facilitate.
If you're in the room and would like to give general public comment, please proceed to the podium or raise your hand on WebEx.
Okay.
Nobody online? Okay.
Right. Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item.
Oh, we do have one. Okay, Lupe, can you go ahead and make your public comment?
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The two ladies and the gentleman that spoke before Wendy were excellent, excellent. It's information that we in the public need, as parents, we need to know there is a process that we can count on to help us. Now, all their I want to call them handouts. Can you put them on your website where we could download that information?
Absolutely. Elisa's PowerPoint is now attached to the agenda, and also the flow chart is attached to the agenda, but we're going to put it somewhere more prominent as well. So yes, thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we have a call-in user who will be our last commenter. We'll unmute you.
Hi, thank you. It's kind of more of a question than a comment. Thank you for all of the information today. I am somebody who my organization brings in programs across the probation system. And I just wanted to know, do you have any information on how the receivership might affect people programming at this moment when our kids need programs more than ever? Thank you.
That is an exceptional question. I think we're all going to be not only thinking about that, but researching that and trying to reach out to people who will give us an idea how this will work. It's new territory for us. And so the answer right now is I don't know, but hopefully by the next meeting and after the hearing in the court, we'll have a better idea of where we are with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 10, adjournment of the regular meeting of July 24, 25. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov. To subscribe to our, sorry, I'm done. It is now 12:55. Can I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Motion from Commissioner Prater, seconded by Commissioner Ship. Unmute yourselves and vote with the voice vote. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.